Chapter 1. Qing Yun mountain range towered over the central plains. In the shade of the mountain was the great river, Hongchuan. On the mountain was the strategic city, Heiyang City, holding the throat of the world. Its geographical location was extremely important. Qing Yun Hill stretched for hundreds of miles, the peaks rising and falling. The highest had 7 peaks, towering into the clouds. Usually only white clouds could be seen circling the waist of the mountain. The true appearance of the peak could not be seen. Qing Yun Hill was covered with dense forests, waterfalls, strange rocks, rare birds, and strange beasts. Everywhere, the scenery was dangerous and strange, famous in the world. But even more famous was the cultivation sect on this mountain, Qing Yun sect. Qing Yun sect had a long history, established for more than 2,000 years, the current leader of the good and evil sections. It was said that the founder of the sect was a Jianghu fortune teller. Half of his life was destitute, depressed, and unable to achieve his ambitions. When he was 49 years old, he wandered the world and passed by Qing Yun Hill. At one glance, he could tell that this mountain was a wonderful place. Gathering the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, it was an excellent place. He immediately climbed the mountain, ate the wind and drank the dew, cultivating and refining the way. Not long after, in a secret cave deep in Qing Yun Hill, he found a nameless ancient scroll. It recorded all kinds of magical techniques, difficult and obscure, but it had endless uses and great power. The fortune teller had this fortuitous encounter and concentrated on his cultivation. In a flash, 20 years passed. He had some small achievements. After a few Jianghu storms, although he could not dominate the world, he became a hero of a region. On Qing Yun Hill, he established a sect, called it Qing Yun. Because of this, the ancient scroll recorded was close to Taoism. He dressed as a Taoist, called himself Qing Yunzi. Later generations of disciples respectfully called him Qing Yunjinren. Qing Yunzi lived for 367 years. He took in 10 disciples. Before he died, he exhorted, "Half of my life, I have studied physiognomy, especially in feng shui." This Qing Yun Hill is a rare spiritual place. Our Qing Yun sect occupies this mountain. In the future we will definitely prosper. You must not give it up. Remember. At that time the 10 disciples all nodded, deeply believing. Qing Yunzi then passed away, unexpectedly in the next 100 years, not knowing if it was the will of the heavens, or because Qing Yunzi's physiognomy was not good. Not only did Qing Yun's sect not prosper, it instead declined day by day. Of the 10 disciples, 2 died young, died in the Jianghu. 1 was crippled, and 1 went missing, leaving only 2 disciples. 50 years passed like this. Qing Yun Hill, within 100 miles radius, experienced an unprecedented natural disaster, an earthquake. Mountain torrents erupted, the earth shook and the mountain swayed. There were countless deaths and injuries. Another branch was actually terminated. As for the only remaining heir, he was limited by his aptitude. His abilities were meager, and he was no longer as glorious as Qing Yunzi was in the past. Instead, because of that ancient scroll, he attracted external enemies to fight over it. After a few bloody battles, if it wasn't for the few powerful magical weapons that Qing Yunzi left behind, Qing Yun sect would have already been destroyed. This situation continued for a full 400 years, and Jade sect did not improve at all. It could almost be described as struggling at death. In the end, they were even bullied to their doorstep. Among the 7 peaks of azure sky, other than the main peak, Tongtian Peak, the other 6 peaks were occupied by foreign enemies. Among them, there were also bandits who used it as a stronghold to plunder and run amok. Those who didn't know had many misunderstandings, thought that Qing Yun sect had fallen to such a state. Although the Qing Yun disciples tried to defend themselves and had the heart to kill the enemy to clear their name, but they were powerless, pitiful, and lamentable. Thinking about it now, that was really the most miserable period of Qing Yun's sect. It wasn't until 1,300 years ago that the situation changed. Probably Qing Yunzi's physiognomy finally showed its power, or maybe heaven was tired and no longer teased Qing Yun's sect. At this time, from the 11th generation of Qing Yun sect, there was actually a stunning and outstanding figure, a peerless figure who led the group. Taoist Qin Yi. Qin Yi's surname was Yi. He was originally a poor scholar. His innate talent was outstanding, but he tried many times but failed. Later, by chance, he was accepted as the last disciple of Qin Yun's sect's 10th generation sect leader Wu Fangzi at the age of only 22. After Qin Yi entered the sect, in just a year, he comprehended all the sword skills that Wu Fangzi passed on to him and stood at the top among the disciples. Another year passed. Even Wu Fangzi could only rely on his profound cultivation to barely be on par with him. Wu Fangzi was surprised and delighted. He resolutely took out the ancient scroll passed down by the founder and passed it to Qin Yi to study it himself. Qin Yi then went into seclusion in the illusory moon cave at the back of Tongtian Peak. This seclusion lasted for 13 years before he came out. It was said that when he came out of seclusion, it was the night of the full moon. That night, the cold moon hung high. The entire Tongtian Peak of Qingyun Hill was as bright as day. Suddenly, a violent wind blew. There was a long dragon's roar coming from the back of the mountain. The sound shook hundreds of miles. Everyone who heard it changed their countenance. Later, there was a faint purple auspicious light, shot up to the sky. A loud sound. The illusory moon cave suddenly opened. Qin Yi's hair and beard were all white. A smile on his face. A clear light around his body. He slowly walked out. Everyone was shocked, thinking that he had become an immortal. After that, Qin Yi officially became a monk, using his surname as Yi, taking the word Qing from Qin Yun, hence his name Qin Yi. That day he smiled and bid farewell to his master Wu Fangzi, said, "Master, please wait for a moment. Disciple is going out to do something. I will be back in a day." Everyone did not understand. A day and night later, Qin Yi returned on his sword. The enemies of the 6 peaks of Qingyun Hill were all killed. Priest Qin Yi's skills were strong, his methods ruthless. In a moment his name shook the world. Qingyun Hill's reputation flourished. Another year passed. Wu Fangzi was about to pass the sect leader position to Qin Yi. He himself went to cultivate, no longer caring about the trifling matters of the sect. After Qin Yi took over, he worked hard, vigorously helped his fellow sect members, strictly selected his successor. In addition to what he comprehended from the nameless ancient scroll, he had an unfathomable power. Qin Yun's sect from then on flourished. Within 50 years, it was already the pillar of the good faction, and after 200 years, it was already the leader of the various good faction sections. Qin Yi Zhenren passed away at the age of 550. He was strict in taking in disciples all his life, only teaching 7 people. Hence Qingyun's 7 peaks were divided into 7 people, so that the 7 branches could pass on the incense, among which the main sect resided in the main peak. Tongtian Peak, Qingyun Monastery, was the center of the sect. Until today, Qingyun's sect had close to 1,000 disciples. The number of skilled people were as many as the clouds. Its prestige was illustrious. Together with Tian'an Temple, Funxiang Valley, they were listed as the 3 great sections. And the current 15th-generation sect leader, Reverend Daoxian, his skills were profound, extraordinary, and holy, even more so a first-class exceptional figure. At the foot of Qingyun Hill, about 50 miles northwest from the big city Hiyang, there was a small village called Grass Temple Village. Here lived 40-odd families, the folk customs simple and honest. The villagers mostly went up the hill to gather firewood and handed it over to Qin Yun's sect in exchange for some taels of silver. Usually the villagers saw Qin Yun disciples coming and going. With miraculous abilities, they worshipped Qin Yun's sect, thinking that they were celestials. And Qin Yun's sect had always taken care of the surrounding people, treated the villagers here quite well. This day, the sky was gloomy, dark clouds hung low, making one feel suffocated. Looking from Grass Temple Village, that lofty Qin Yun Hill peers straight into the horizon, strange peaks and strange rocks, indistinctly carrying a trace of malevolence. Just that, the villagers had lived here for generations. They had seen this scene countless of times. They did not care, not to mention the ignorant children. "Brat, where are you going?" A scolding, with a bit of laughter, came from the mouth of a half-grown child. He looked about 12 or 13 years old, with delicate features, leading 4 or 5 boys and girls, chasing another child in front of them. The child in front was 2 years younger than him, also a bit shorter. His face was full of smile, running forward, turning his head and making a face. "Sha Danon, if you have the guts, then stop." The child behind shouted loudly. The child in front called Sha Danon spat, said while running, "You think I am an idiot?" Then he ran even faster, running all the way. The children gradually came to the broken grass temple at the east of the village. From the outside, the small grass temple was very old. No one knew how many storms it had experienced. Sha Danon was the first to rush in. Unexpectedly, accidentally tripped by the door, plopped and fell. The children behind him were overjoyed. They rushed forward and pressed him under their bodies. The handsome boy had a smug look on his face. He laughed and said, "I caught you. Now you have nothing to say, right?" But Sha Danon rolled his eyes, said, "Not counted, not counted. You plotted against me. How can it count?" The boy was surprised, asked, "When did I plot against you?" Sha Danon said, "Bay, you dare to say that you did not put this door here?" The child called Bay said loudly, "There is no such thing." Sha Danon pursed his lips, tilted his head, determined not to surrender, not to give in. Bay's anger rose. One hand strangled his neck, said angrily, "You said if you catch me, you will admit defeat. Do you not give in?" Sha Danon ignored him. Bay's face was red, his hand tightened, said loudly, "Do you not give in?" Sha Danon's throat was strangled. Breathing gradually became difficult. Slowly his face began to turn red, but he was very stubborn at such a young age. He did not say a word. Bay became more and more angry. The strength of his hand increased. His mouth repeated, "Do you not give in? Do you not give in? Do you not give in?" At this time, the other children saw something was wrong. They quietly retreated, leaving only these two ignorant children, for the sake of the fight, let their own extreme temper, persisted with each other like this. Seeing a disaster was about to happen, suddenly there was a Buddhist voice in the depths of the temple. Someone said, "Ba, quickly stop." A skinny hand, stretched out 2 fingers, flicked on Bay's hands. Bay's body shook like he was struck by lightning. His hands naturally loosened. Sha Danon breathed heavily, obviously holding it in. They were startled, came back to their senses, remembered the scene just now, looked at each other. Both were more and more afraid. Lin Jingyu said, "Xiao Fan, I'm sorry. I don't know why." Sha Danon shook his head. His breathing gradually steadied, said, "It's okay. Hey, who are you?" The children followed his eyes and saw in the temple there was an old monk, his face full of wrinkles, wearing an old kasaya, his whole body dirty. In his hand, there was a string of green jade beads, crystal clear, dazzling, emitting a faint green light. What was strange was that among the dozen or so pearls of the same size, there was a dull, dark purple pearl that was neither jade nor stone. Chapter 2. The old monk did not answer, only looked at the 2 children carefully. Couldn't help but look at Bay a few more times, thought, "Good talent, but why is his temper so extreme?" Sha Danon took a step forward, said, "Hey, who are you? How come I have never seen you before?" Grass Temple Village is near Jade. Taoism is respected here. Buddhist disciples are very rare, so Sha Danon asked. The old monk looked at him. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Asked back, "Young benefactor, just now your life was at stake. You only need to admit defeat. Why did you struggle to hold on? If not for this old monk, I'm afraid you would have lost your life in vain." Sha Danon was stunned, thinking that what the old monk said may not be unreasonable. But the last moment, he still could not say anything, only stunned there. Bay glared at the old monk, pulled Sha Danon's hand, said, "Xiao Fan, this old monk is strange. Let's ignore him." Then he pulled Sha Danon outside. The children all followed, apparently always following his lead. Sha Danon subconsciously took a step, but after he walked out of the temple for a while, he could not help but look back into the temple. The sky was getting dark. He could vaguely see the old monk still standing there, but his face was blurred. Late at night, the wind blew away the clouds. The dark clouds rolled in the sky. The wind and rain were coming. The atmosphere was murderous. The old monk was still in the grass temple, meditating. Looking up, Qing Yun Hill in the distance was only left with a stretch of haze. The surroundings were quiet and devoid of human voices, only the sound of strong wind and thunder that filled the sky and covered the earth. What a strong wind! A bolt of lightning split the sky. The lonely little grass-stempled temple in the wind brightened. The old monk was standing at the door of the temple, his face serious, looking up at the sky, his eyebrows wrinkled tighter and tighter. In the village to the west, a strand of black gas had suddenly appeared. It was dense like black ink, and it roiled without end. The old monk stood in the grass-stempled temple, staring at the black gas. Suddenly, the black gas rolled up, spiraled up, and went straight out of the village, toward the direction of the grass-stempled temple. Its speed was extremely fast, arriving in the blink of an eye. The old monk's eyes were sharp, and he noticed that there was a child among them. It was Lin Jingyu whom he had seen during the day. The old monk's face darkened, without hesitation. His skinny body suddenly rose from the ground, straight into the black gas. A surprised voice came from somewhere in the darkness. Huh. A few muffled sounds. The black gas suddenly stopped, hovering above the grass-stempled temple. The old monk with Bei under his ribs slowly descended, but a piece of his kasaya was torn off. With the weak light, Bei could see Bei's eyes were closed. His breathing was steady, not sure if he was asleep or fainted. The old monk did not put him down. He raised his head to look at the ball of black gas in the sky and said, "Your Taoist skills are profound. Why would you attack an ignorant child? I'm afraid it's beneath your dignity." A hoarse voice came. "Who are you? You dare to meddle in my business." The old monk did not answer, but said, "This is the foot of Qing Yun Hill. If Qing Yun's sect knows that you are running amok here, I'm afraid you will not have a good time in the future. This is the foot of Qing Yun Hill. If Qing Yun's sect knows that you are running amok here, I am afraid you will have a hard time in the future." That person said, "What is Qing Yun's sect? They're just relying on their numbers." The old monk put his palms together and said, "Amit Ba, a monk is merciful. I cannot watch this child fall into your hands." That person said angrily, "Damn Baldy, you are looking for death." Following his words, in the black gas that had been hovering, a dark red light flashed. In an instant, the little grass temple was surrounded by a strong Yin wind and ghost energy. Poison blood banner. The old monk's face suddenly showed anger. "Evil creature, you dare to cultivate such an evil thing that is devoid of conscience, a scourge of the human world. I will not forgive you today." That hoarse voice laughed coldly, but did not reply. There was a whistling sound. The red light shone brightly from mid-air. The stench of blood increased. A Tuzhong red banner was slowly raised. At this moment, the ghost cries became more mournful, as if there were countless resentful spirits crying in the night. In between, there was a faint sound of bones cracking. It was shocking to hear. "Damn Baldy die!" That person in the black gas shouted from the blood-red banner. A ferocious ghost face suddenly appeared. It had 3 triangles for eyes, sharp fangs. Ka, ka, ka. The sound of bones cracking. The 4 eyes on the ghost face suddenly opened. With a roar, it turned into a real body, rushed out from the banner, with an incomparable smell of blood, attacked the old monk. The old monk's face was even more furious. He knew that the more powerful this poison blood banner was, the more innocent people would be killed in the process of cultivation. To cultivate to this level of power, it would probably require the blood of more than 300 people. This evil person was really devoid of conscience. Seeing that the ghost was about to reach him, the old monk did not put down Lin Jingyu. Only using his left hand, which was holding the jasper prayer beads, drew a circle in the air in front of him, one hand forming the Buddhist lion seal, 5 fingers stretched out, fingertips faintly emitting golden light. In a short moment, a golden light appeared in front of him, brilliant, resisting the ghost in midair. "Small tricks you dare to use." Before he could finish his sentence, his body suddenly shook. He felt that his right hand, which was carrying Lin Jingyu, his wrist was bitten by a strange thing. A numbing itch immediately spread throughout his body. His vision darkened. The golden light in front of him was on the verge of collapsing. And at this moment, the ghost in front of him had another strange change. on its forehead in the middle of its left and right eyes. Ka-ka, two sounds. Another huge blood-red eye opened. The stench of blood rose. Its power was even stronger. A ghost howl was heard. A blood-red light flashed. The ghost smashed the golden light into pieces, heavily hit the old monk's chest. The old monk flew backwards. Lin Jingyu, who was under his ribs, also fell to the ground. A few muffled sounds on the way. Most of his ribs were probably broken. After a while, his skinny body smashed into the wall of the grass temple. A boom sound, dust flew, the entire wall collapsed. Ha ha ha! The person in the black gas laughed wildly, extremely pleased. The old monk stood up shakily, his throat hot. He could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood, dyeing the front of his monk robes red. He only felt stars flashing before his eyes. His whole body was in pain, and that numbing itch was getting closer and closer to his heart. He forced himself to calm down, glanced at Lin Jingyu, who was still unconscious on the ground, and saw that in his clothes, a colorful centipede slowly crawled out. It was as big as a palm. The strangest thing was that its tail was split into 7, as if it had 7 tails. And every one of them had a different color. The colors were gorgeous, but within the beauty, there was a tinge of terror. 7-tailed centipede. The old monk's words sounded like a moan. The black gas on his face became heavier. Blood kept flowing out from the corner of his mouth, as if he could not hold on any longer, but he still forced himself to not collapse. He looked at the ball of black gas in midair, said, "You placed the world's most poisonous object on that child, and purposely hid your strength, waiting for an opportunity to injure me. You are here for me, right?" The person in the black gas laughed coldly, said, "That's right, I am here specifically for you, Puji Bald Donkey. If not for that, with your Tian Temple Buddhist cultivation, it would not be easy to deal with. All right, now quickly hand over the sinister orb. I will give you the antidote for the 7-tailed centipede, and spare your life." Puji laughed bitterly, said, "To think that there's a Ji in my name, I did not think that you would refine this poisoned blood banner evil object. How can you not covet the sinister orb?" His face turned solemn, resolutely said, "You want me to give you the world's most vicious object. It is wishful thinking." The person in the black gas was enraged. "Then go and see your Buddha." A red light flashed. The poisoned blood banner fluttered in the wind. Ghost cries were heard. The huge ghost reappeared, slightly circled in the air, and once again rushed towards Puji. Puji gave a loud shout. His robes fluttered without any wind. His originally small and skinny body seemed to have grown a lot bigger. He exerted strength in his left hand. A crisp sound was heard. The string of green jade prayer beads was broken by him. More than 10 crystal-clear prayer beads did not fall. Instead, they spun nonstop. Each emitted a green light. Floating in front of Puji, only that dark purple bead fell straight down. Puji flipped his palm, grabbed that dark purple bead in his hand. Both hands immediately formed a water bottle seal. Both eyes wide open, his whole body faintly emitting golden light, his mouth chanting word by word, "Mimon I Ba Mimu." 6 words, Great Ming incantation. The person in the black gas's tone immediately became more solemn. Following Puji's Mu word, in an instant, all the green jade prayer beads shone brightly. At the same time, the ghost that was summoned by the evil person had already rushed to the front, the smell of blood assaulting his nostrils. But once it came into contact with the green jade light, it immediately became invisible, unable to move forward, so it was stuck in the air. Even so, Puji's body shook again. The 7-tailed centipede was the world's most poisonous creature. Even with his hundreds of years of cultivation, it was still difficult to resist. But on his face that was faintly emitting black gas, there was a faint trace of a smile, with a sense of awe. "Hey!" Puji gave a loud shout, like a lion's roar. The sound shook the surroundings. The green jade prayer beads in front of him were under the influence of the Buddha's power. The light in front of him became even brighter. Suddenly, with a poo sound, one of the prayer beads broke in the air, transformed into a hey word, rushed forward, and hit that ghost's face. "Wah, yeah!" That ghost let out a mournful cry, immediately retreated a few steps. The red light around its body was greatly reduced. Obviously, it was injured. The person in the black gas said angrily, "What a good bald donkey!" He was about to move, but in a flash, 7 or 8 prayer beads transformed into Buddhist incantations and hit the ghost. That ghost kept howling, retreated a few steps, showing a terrified expression. When it was hit by the 9th green jade prayer bead, it finally let out a long cry. All 5 of its eyes were broken. Its bones were rattling with a bang sound. It fell to the ground, struggled for a few times, then slowly became a pool of blood, extremely stinky. At the same time, Puji, with a wah sound, spat out a large mouthful of blood. The color of the blood had already become black. Ah! A scream, at the critical moment of the battle between the two masters, came from the entrance of the grass temple. Puji and that evil person were surprised. The black gas in the sky moved. Puji also looked toward the entrance at the same time, saw the child Sha Danan, for some reason, had come to the front of the grass temple, stood at the entrance, stunned at the strange scene in the temple. The person in the black gas snorted coldly, did not see how he moved. The 7-tailed centipede that was originally on Bei's body suddenly shook its tail, took the momentum, and flew, as fast as lightning, toward Sha Danan. Puji's eyebrows raised, his right hand pointed, a green jade prayer bead rushed toward it. That 7-tailed centipede seemed to be psychic, knew how powerful it was, did not dare to resist, shook its tail like a wing, rushed into the black gas, no longer making any sound. The person in the black gas sinisterly said, "Ha! Really worthy of being Sky Song Temple's 4 great holy monks, heavily injured, still able to break my poisoned blood corpse king. But you received the corpse king's attack, and also got poisoned by the 7-tailed centipede. How long can you last? Better obediently give me this sinister orb." At this moment, even the corner of Puji's eyes began to bleed black blood, laughed bitterly, hissed, "Even if I die here today, I will get rid of you, this evil person." As soon as he finished, all the green jade prayer beads in front of him lit up at the same time. The person in the sky immediately became alert. Suddenly a whistling sound, an object flashing with green light hit the black gas from behind. It was the green jade prayer bead that hit the 7-tailed centipede, flew for a distance in the air, was secretly controlled by Puji, turned to the back of the black gas, and suddenly launched an attack. Only to hear a roar in the black gas. Obviously that person was caught off guard. Bang, 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 a few chaotic sounds, where the green light flashed, the black gas scattered, and finally dispersed in all directions, disappearing into nothingness. From midair, a tall and thin person slowly descended. His entire body was wrapped tightly in a black robe. Unable to see his age, only a pair of eyes, flashing with a fierce light. On his back, there was also a long sword tied. Puji said in a low voice, "Your Excellency has such skills. Why don't you dare to show yourself?" The black-attired person's eyes flashed with a fierce light, sternly said, "Bald donkey, today I will let you die without a burial place." After speaking, he backhandedly pulled out the long sword on his back. The sword was as clear as autumn water, bright but not glaring, with a faint clear light attached to it. "Good sword," Puji could not help but exclaimed. The black-attired person gave a low humph, his hand holding the sword incantation. His feet stepped on the 7 stars, took 7 consecutive steps. The long sword suddenly pierced the sky, his mouth chanting, "9 heavens Xian Sha, transform into celestial thunder. Brilliant heaven's might, lead by the sword." In a short moment, the dark clouds in the sky suddenly rolled. Thunder rumbled. Lightning flashed continuously at the edge of the dark clouds. Between the heaven and earth was a chilling scene. The strong wind blew. Celestial sword, wielding thunder, true formula. Puji's face instantly turned as pale as ash, followed by a kind of surprise, a trace of despair, and a little bit of inexplicable fanaticism. "You are actually from Qingyin's sect. P.S. In the text, Puji recited Mo, Ma, Na, Ba is the famous 6 words Great Bright Mantra, also known as Guanyin-inspired mantra in the Buddhist scriptures. According to the Buddhist scriptures, This mantra connects heaven and earth. Reciting it can rid one of the dust, cleanse one's heart, and reach the state of great joy and bliss. It is one of the most famous classical mantras in the Buddhist sect. Now the full text is appended as follows. Imo ma, pami mu, maga inayana, jidu te bada, jite jena, wadaliga, sa erhanta, boli sitaga, nabu rona, nabuli dio erbana, maluji sayashako. Chapter 3. In Sha Danan's eyes, the clouds in the sky, no matter if it was white clouds or dark clouds, had never been so close to the ground. The thunder had never been so deafening. The lightning had never been so blinding. It was almost hard for him to look straight at it. It was like the sky was going to collapse. He stood there blankly, watching the man in black and the old monk in the grass-temple staring at each other angrily, preparing to fight. Suddenly, a clap of thunder sounded. At the moment when his ears were ringing, he saw a dazzling lightning appeared in the sky. It struck the earth and landed on the sword of the man in black. In a moment, the clothes of the man in black bulged up. His eyes were wide open, like they were about to burst. At this moment, the inside of the temple, under the strong lighting, it was as bright as day. The lightning that bloomed on the tip of the sword was so beautiful that Sha Danan held his breath. In Puji's eyes, a strange fanaticism appeared again. Is this the power of Taoism? The man in black shouted. He used all his strength to shake his wrist. After a clap of thunder, the lightning on the sword shot toward Puji. Along the way, the grass, trees, bricks, and stones were all shaken. Only the road in the middle was left with a deep burning mark. Puji took 3 steps back, removed his hand sign, put his palms together. His face was solemn. His body was glowing with a faint golden light. He whispered, Buddha is merciful. Pa! The remaining 7 jasper prayer beads in front of him broke into pieces. 3 feet in front of him, a huge Buddha character was formed. The golden light was so bright that it could not be looked at directly. The next moment, the lightning and the Buddha character collided. Sha Danan suddenly felt his heart beat violently. It was like all the blood in his body was flowing backward. His hands and feet were soft. He could not breathe. At that moment, the wind stopped, the thunder stopped, the whole world stopped. Then, he involuntarily flew backward. Before he could feel fear, he saw the white light and the golden light. It was so beautiful that it was far better than the sun in the sky. The entire grass temple was torn into pieces. With the 2 people fighting as the center, the pieces flew out in all directions, including the sky. His heart was empty, and he could only hear the sound of the sharp wind blowing past his ears. He felt afraid and subconsciously wanted to curl up his body, but he was powerless. He could only let himself drift to an unknown place. A thought surfaced in his mind. Am I going to die? An intense fear suddenly attacked his heart. His whole body was covered in cold sweat, and he trembled slightly. When death was right in front of them, how should they face it? He fainted and lost consciousness. Posey slowly walked over, staggered, carrying Sha Danan and Bay under his ribs, went to a slightly clean place, gently put down the 2 children, suddenly felt a sharp pain all over his body, as if it was about to split open. He could no longer support himself, and sat down. He looked at his chest, and saw through the scorched smell of the monk's robe. He could vaguely see a black gas gradually encircling his chest, leaving only a small area on his chest that was not invaded. He laughed bitterly and reached into his bosom. His hands trembled violently. After a while, he slowly took out a red pill. It was about the size of a finger and looked ordinary. Posey sighed, whispered, Didn't expect the ghost doctor to be right. I still need to take his 3 days must-die pill. He hesitated for a moment, then finally nodded and swallowed the pill. Then, he raised his head and looked at the faraway mountain. It was finally raining from the sky. Mount Jade stood tall in the wind and rain, hazy and mysterious. Taoism's magic is really amazing. It can actually control the divine power of the heavens. If it can be compared with our Buddhism, we can learn from each other's strengths. We can definitely solve the mystery of immortality. Unfortunately, Reverend Doyle Shun's cultivation is far higher than mine, but he is still like my three Xixiangs, unable to let go of his sectarian bias, unable to let go of his identity and status. Sigh. Posey let out a long sigh, took back his gaze, and looked at the two children. The rain was getting heavier, drenching their heads and faces. The grass temple was already torn apart in the battle. There was no place nearby that could completely shelter them from the wind and rain. His heart suddenly tightened. He couldn't help but worry for the two children. Just now he had forcefully used his true vitality, using Tian Temple's great Brahmin wisdom strange skill, borrowing the power of the Buddhism treasure Jadeite prayer beads, to produce a great demon-subduing force. Only then was he able to block that evil person's incomparably powerful, celestial sword-wield thunder true formula, and also heavily injured him, causing him to flee in fright. But his body was heavily injured, and he was hit by the Taoism's strange skill. He was already at the end of his rope. Even his last chance of survival was gone. Right now, he was only relying on the strange medicine. 3 days, must-die pill given by the ghost doctor to prolong his life for 3 days only. Although that evil person's injuries were heavy, his foundation was not injured. After I leave, he will definitely turn back and kill the witnesses. At that time, not only these two children, I'm afraid the lives of the entire village will be in danger. What should I do? Puji's mind was in a mess. His cultivation was extremely high. But firstly, he knew that he was going to die. His mind was in a mess. Secondly, he was worried about the lives of the innocent commoners. And unfortunately, that evil person seemed to be a person of high status in Qingyun's sect. If he rashly went up the mountain to ask for help, he was afraid that it would not be enough to accomplish anything, but more than enough to spoil things. But the most regretful thing in his heart was another matter, which was that his life's greatest wish could not be fulfilled. As one of the 4 great holy monks of Tian'in Temple, the world looked up to him, extremely honored, but to him, the more important thing was to understand the mystery of life and death, to untie the knot of eternal life and death. Just that as early as 50 years ago, he had already realized that no matter how hard he trained in Buddhism Taoism, he could only increase his power and cultivation and could not untie the mystery of life and death. He pondered hard. 10 years later, he actually thought of an unprecedented idea. In this world, Buddhism, Taoism, evil 3 sects were the most prosperous. Their attainments and spells were the highest and deepest. The evil sect had a vile reputation, their evil arts cruel and immoral. People did not take them. And Taoism's strange arts, profound and marvelous. And Buddhism each excelled in the battlefield. If they could study together, they would definitely be able to break through the stalemate. Just that he never expected. His 3 senior brothers, who had always been open-minded, all objected at the same time, thinking that it was heresy, and instead earnestly advised him. He was unwilling and visited the famous Taoism sects a few times, just Qingyun Hill alone, but was always politely rejected by Qingyun's sect head, Reverend Daoxian. Thinking of this, he laughed bitterly, with a sense of self-mockery. Thought, I only have 3 days to live, and still thinking of immortality. Isn't it just making trouble for myself? Just that although he was open-minded, but when he saw the 2 children still lying on the ground, he really could not let it go. For the moment, he could not think of any good plan. He looked to the left and right, saw a pine tree far away. It could still shelter them from the wind and rain for a while. It was better than nothing. He forced himself to concentrate, carried the 2 children, and struggled to walk towards that direction. After much difficulty, he finally reached the tree and carefully put the 2 children down. Puji was already exhausted. He sat down on the ground, his back leaning against the tree trunk, panting nonstop. Heaven and earth are heartless, treating all living things as dogs. This famous Taoism saying, with some mournful anger, slowly recited from Puji's mouth. The firmament was like ink covering the earth. Boundless dark clouds pressed down. Rain fell from the sky, fine and dense. The cold wind blew, bit by bit, hitting their faces, chilling their hearts. He looked up at the firmament. After a long while, he slowly retracted his gaze, looked at the 2 children in front of him, quietly said, 2 young benefactors, old monk had the heart to save you. but helpless. This matter was started by me, and instead harmed the two of you. It is really a sin. AI, if the two of you were Qingyun disciples on that Qingyun hill among the crowd, I'm afraid it would be safer, but now. Suddenly, Puji's body shook. His mouth muttered, Qingyun disciples, Qingyun disciples. His thoughts turned quickly, as if he had thought of something, but was about to lose it in a blink of an eye. In a short while, he had already broken out in cold sweat. Then, in his eyes, for some reason, that inexplicable fanaticism appeared again. He laughed to the sky, but in his laughter, there was a trace of madness. Wonderful, wonderful. Although I don't have long to live, but if I impart Buddhism's divine skills to one person and then let him join Qingyun's sect to learn Taoism's skills, wouldn't it be killing two birds with one stone? Not only can I save their lives, I can also fulfill my wish. Buddhism and Taoism have been estranged since ancient times, never interacting with each other. Qingyun's sect would never have thought that a young lad who has lived at the foot of Qingyun Hill since young would know Buddhism's great skills. As long as there is someone who has learned from both schools, he will definitely be able to break through the thousands of years puzzle of immortality. If so, what regrets do I have in death? He made up his mind. His entire person was extremely excited, both his cheeks flushed, eyes bloodshot, subconsciously looking at Lin Jingyu, his hands stretched out. But halfway through, he stopped, thinking, this matter is very important. Nowadays, sectarian bias is very important, extremely taboo to secretly learn. If people know, the matter will be exposed. There is no doubt death. Lin Jingyu, this child's talent, is very good. If accepted by Qingyun's sect, he will certainly be noticed by the masters. At such a young age, I'm afraid he can't hide such a big secret. Thinking of this, his eyes landed on Sha Danan. He remembered Sha Danan's stubbornness during the day. He nodded, said, it doesn't matter if your talent is a bit lacking. It will depend on your luck in the future. Finished, without hesitation, he patted Sha Danan's body a few times, using the remaining Buddhist power to wake him up. Sha Danan slowly woke up, his eyes blurred, his ears were still ringing. After a while, he returned to normal, seeing clearly what was in front of him. He was shocked, his mouth wide open. The old monk's body was full of scars. Sitting in front of him, the left side of his body seemed to have been burned by something, dry and ugly, black gas heavy on his face, a face of death. But for some reason, the old monk looked excited, his eyes full of smiles. In addition, he also saw his playmate Bei lying on the side, unconscious. What are you doing? Sha Danan was stunned for a while, then asked. Puji did not answer, carefully looked at him, then asked, young benefactor, this storm is heavy. You are a child. Why did you come to this remote place? Sha Danan was startled, said, I saw you standing in the temple in the evening. Then I saw it was going to rain. This place is very broken. I thought it would be very cold, so I brought you some food. Puji's mouth moved, put his palms together. Good, good. Everything is predestined. Our Buddha is merciful. Sha Danan was surprised. What did you say? Puji smiled. Old monk is saying, young benefactor and I are predestined. Since that is the case, old monk has a set of cultivation method. Young benefactor is willing to learn? Sha Danan said. What is the method? Puji was startled for a moment, then laughed, reached out his skinny hand, touched his little head, said, it is not anything, just to teach you some breathing methods. After you learn it, you have to promise me a few things, okay? Sha Danan did not really understand, but still said, say it. Puji said, you must not tell anyone about this, not even your loved ones. Can you do it? Sha Danan nodded, said, I know. I will not say it even if I die. Puji was shocked, seeing his young age. His face was full of perseverance. The rain was like knives, like frost, wetting his little face. He looked a little haggard. Puji suddenly took a deep breath, looked down, and no longer looked at him, but continued. Also, you must practice this technique once a day, but you cannot practice it in front of others. You can only do it in the dead of night. Finally, unless it is a life and death situation, you must not use this method, otherwise there will be a big disaster. Then, He opened his eyes again, stared at Shah Danon, said, "Can you do it?" Shah Danon hesitated for a moment, tilted his head, then scratched his head. His face was puzzled, but finally nodded heavily. Pooji smiled, did not say anything more, then began to teach him a set of incantations. This set of incantations was not long, only about 1,000 words, but it was difficult to understand. Shah Danon used all his strength, used 6 hours to memorize it. Pooji waited for him to completely memorize it, then let out a sigh of relief. His face was extremely tired. He looked at Shah Danon. His eyes could not help but have kindness, said, "Old monk has been cultivating all his life, never had the thought of taking a disciple, did not expect at the moment of death. We have the fate of master and disciple. You should also know my name." He paused, said, "My Buddhist name is Pooji, Skysong monk." Child, do you know Skysong Temple?" Shah Danon thought for a moment, then shook his head. Pooji laughed involuntarily and said, "What a child." Then he remembered something, took out a dark purple bead, looked at it carefully, then gave it to Shah Danon, said, "You keep this bead, do not let others see it. When you settle down, find a deep valley and throw it down, that's it. Also, the name I just told you, you must not tell others." Shah Danon took the bead, said, "Got it." Pooji touched his head, said, "You and I have this fate, do not know if we will meet again in the next life. Child, kneel down and kowtow out to me 3 times, call me master." Shah Danon looked at Pooji and saw his smile was gone. His face was solemn. He nodded and said, "Master." Then he kneeled on the ground and kowtowed 3 times. Just as he finished kowtowing, before he raised his head, he heard Pooji laughed, but the laughter was filled with sadness and decisiveness. Shah Danon was about to raise his head to look at him, but suddenly he felt his back was patted by someone. Then his vision went black and he lost consciousness again. Chapter 4. Early in the morning, the rain finally stopped. The water droplets on the tree were crystal clear, quietly slid from the edge of the leaves, fell down, because of the wind, drew a beautiful arc in the air, fell on Shah Danon's face. The coldness woke Shah Danon from his dream. He opened his eyes, subconsciously wanted to call out, "Master," but there was no one around. Only Bay lying next to him, having a good dream. It seemed like a dream, but the broken grass temple in the distance, his playmate sleeping next to him, all told him that it was all real. He thought for a while in a daze, shook his head, walked over to Lin Jingyu, and pushed him hard. Lin Jingyu mumbled a few words and slowly woke up. He rubbed his eyes, and before he could speak, he felt a chill and couldn't help but yawn. He opened his eyes and saw himself and Shah Danon were all wet, lying under a pine tree in the wild. He was stunned, said, "Wasn't I sleeping at home? How did I get here?" Shah Danon shrugged his shoulders, said, "I don't know, but I am very cold. Let's go back." Bay's mind was full of questions, but his body was really cold. He nodded, got up, and ran toward the village with Shah Danon. Before they arrived at the village, the two of them already felt that something was wrong. Usually, by this time, the villagers would have already woken up, but today it was incomparably quiet. Not even a shadow could be seen. Moreover, as the morning breeze blew, there was a faint smell of blood. They looked at each other, saw the surprise in each other's eyes, and hastened their steps toward the village. Not long after, the two of them reached the village entrance. Looking from the main road at the village entrance, they saw that on the flat land in the middle of the village, Grass Temple Village had more than 40 families, more than 200 people, big and small, men and women, all lying on the open ground, their bodies stiff, turned into corpses. Blood flowed like a river. Flies flew everywhere. The smell of blood assaulted their nostrils. Bay and Shah Danon saw this horrible scene. Under the shock, screamed and fainted. After not knowing how long, Shah Danon suddenly woke up, sat up, panting, his hands slightly trembling. When he fainted just now, his mind was filled with the faces of evil ghosts, blood and white bones. It was really a nightmare. He calmed himself down and looked around. He saw that he was in an ordinary room with 2 small windows. The room was simple and clean. There were only a few pine wood tables and chairs with a kettle and cups. Occupying half of the room was a large Kong bed connected to each other. There were 4 beds on it. Other than the bed he was lying on, the bedding next to him was also a little messy, as if someone had just slept in it. As for the other two, their blankets were folded neatly and meticulously. On the wall, directly above the four beds, there was a banner with a large word written on it. Doubt. From the looks of it, it looked like an ordinary guest room in an inn, or a room shared by a few disciples who were learning from their masters. Shah Danon sat for a while. Suddenly a thought rose in his mind. Maybe everything last night was a nightmare? Maybe I've been sleeping here all this time? Perhaps when he walked out of this room, his mother would laugh and scold him as usual. You little lazy worm. He slowly got out of bed, put on his shoes, and walked towards the door step by step. The door was unlatched. From a gap of the door, there was a faint breeze blowing in. It was cool. He walked step by step, but his two little hands were clenched tighter and tighter. His heart was beating so fast that he held his breath. Soon, he walked to the door and put his hand on the door. At that moment, the wooden door was as heavy as a mountain, as heavy as iron. He clenched his teeth and steeled his heart. With a creak, he opened the door to his room. The bright light from outside suddenly shone in, making him squint his eyes. The warm sunlight fell on his body. There was a touch of warmth. But his heart suddenly fell into an ice house. Outside the door was a small courtyard. There were a few pine and cypress trees, a few bushes of grass, and a few fragrant flowers happily blooming. In front of the door was a corridor leading to the outside of the courtyard. For feet in front of the door, there were several steps connecting the courtyard and the corridor. At the corner of the steps, there was a lonely child, holding his cheek, sitting there, motionless. Perhaps the sound of the door startled him. The child hesitated for a moment, then slowly turned his head. "Bay." Shah Danon opened his mouth wide. There were thousands of questions in his mind, but when the words came to his mouth, they turned into silence. He wanted to shout again, but his heart was depressed. He could not shout. 2 lines of tears, just like that, quietly fell. 2 children, just like that, silently, looked at each other. Far away, a quiet bird cry came. The sky blue, a few white clouds. Shah Danon sat on the other side of the steps, head down, looking at the stone path in the small courtyard. In the small courtyard, it was quiet. After a long time, Bay slowly said, "I woke up earlier than you. There were a few people in the house. I asked them, 'This is Mount Jadian, Peak of Widows.'" Shah Danon whispered, "Mount Jadian." Lin Jingyu said, "Heard from them. It was a few Qingyun disciples who were passing by, saw the village. Speaking till here, his voice could not help but choked. He rubbed his eyes hard and took a deep breath before continuing. Later, they found us at the back of the village and brought us up the mountain. Shah Danon's mouth moved, but he did not raise his head, said, "What are we going to do, Bay?" Bay shook his head, sadly said, "I don't know." Shah Danon was about to say more. Suddenly, a strange voice came from the corridor behind him. "Ah, you all woke up?" Both of them looked back at the same time, saw a young Taoist standing there, wearing a blue Taoist robe, quite heroic. He quickly walked over, said, "Just nice. The masters also want to see you, ask you some questions. Come with me." Shah Danon and Bay looked at each other, stood up. Bay said, "Yes, please lead us there, big brother." The young Taoist priest glanced at Bay, nodded and said, "Follow me." Following the Taoist priest, the two of them walked out of the courtyard. In front of them was an even longer and larger circular corridor. Every 20 feet, there was a red pillar. In the middle of every 2 pillars, there is also an arch. They walked along the corridor, passed by many arches and pillars, then discovered in each arch there's almost the same small courtyard as the one before. Seems like this is the living place of Jadian disciples. Not to mention other things, just from the scale, there are probably no less than 100 such small courtyards, showing the number of Jadian disciples. After walking for a while, he finally saw the end of this corridor. It was an incomparably tall white wall, and below it was a large door. The 2 thick wooden doors were 10 zhang high, and one would have to raise their head to look at them. It was unknown how such a large piece of wood was found in the first place. That young Taoist priest turned a blind eye to them. Perhaps he had been going in and out of this place for a long time and had become numb to it. His face did not show the slightest bit of emotion that the two children had. Expressionless, he walked straight out of the door. Shah Danan and Bay quickly followed. As soon as they stepped out of the door, the two children held their breath at the same time, could not believe everything in front of them. This is almost like the legendary fairyland. It was a very large square. The ground was paved with white marble, shining brightly. At first glance, it made people feel small and insignificant. Far away, the white clouds, like a veil, are floating under the feet. In the center of the square, every 100 feet, there is a copper cauldron divided into 3 rows, 3 in each row, a total of 9, placed orderly. From time to time, light smoke floated up from the cauldron. The smell is clear and does not disperse. Go this way. Seeming to understand the two children's thoughts, the young Taoist's face showed a smile. Let them watch for a while, then wake them up and continue to walk forward. This is the cloud sea of Jadian's 6 sceneries. There is even better ahead, the young Taoist said while walking. They could not help but ask, "What is it?" The young Taoist pointed said Rainbow Bridge. The two looked into the distance, saw far ahead, at the end of the square, behind the misty clouds, there seemed to be something shining. They quickened their pace and walked forward. Gradually, there was the sound of water. There were also 1 or 2 strange thunder-like sounds, not knowing where they came from. As they got closer, the clouds were like gentle fairies, gently surrounding them, gradually pulling away the veil, revealing the clear face. At the end of the square, a stone bridge without a seat or pier rose into the sky. One end of the bridge was on the square, straight upward into the depths of the clouds, like a dragon leaping into the sky, proud and aloof. There was the sound of water. Under the sunlight, the whole bridge emitted 7 colors like a rainbow in the sky, falling into the world, gorgeous, beautiful. Shah Danan and Bay were stunned. The young Taoist smiled, said, "Follow me." Then, he took the lead and walked on the stone bridge. Stepping on the stone bridge, the two discovered, on both sides of the bridge, water constantly flowed down, extremely clear, but the middle part was dry. The sunlight shone on the bridge through the clouds, then was refracted by the water, becoming a gorgeous rainbow. The Taoist looked at their ecstatic appearance, said, "Be careful. Under this bridge is a bottomless abyss. If you accidentally fall in, then you will die without a burial place." Shah Danan and Bay were surprised. They quickly calmed down and walked carefully. This rainbow bridge was extremely high and long. The 3 of them walked on it, only to feel the clouds on the left and right gradually sank under their feet as they went higher and higher. But the strange sound in front of them was still coming. After a while, the clouds thinned. They walked out of the sea of clouds. The eyes suddenly brightened. The sky was clear, blue like transparent. The sky on all sides, vast and boundless. Below was the vast sea of clouds, gently floating. Looking at it, their hearts suddenly felt relaxed. And in front of them is the Peak of Widows, where the main hall of Jadian Temple, Crystal Hall, is located. The green mountains were green. The palace was majestic. The Crystal Hall was located at the peak, surrounded by clouds. From time to time, there were a few cranes, flying over with long cries, circling in the air like a celestial spiritual realm, making people feel reverence. At this time, the rainbow bridge no longer rose, making an arch in the air, landed in front of the hall next to a green pool. At the same time, Taoist songs were faintly heard from Crystal Hall, the atmosphere of immortals. And the strange sound also became louder. The 3 of them walked down the rainbow bridge, came to the pool, a wide stone stairs, from the pool to the door of Crystal Hall. The pool water was green, clear like a mirror. The shadows of people and mountains could be clearly seen. They walked up the stone stairs, about to go to the door above, suddenly heard a roar from deep in the pool, like thunder. It was the strange sound from before. Looking around, they saw a huge whirlpool suddenly appeared in the center of the pool. A moment later, a huge wave rolled up, a huge figure jumped out, water splashed all over the sky. The young Taoist seemed to be prepared. His left hand pulled. His body floated in the air, quickly floated back more than 2 feet, stopped in midair. But how could the two children escape? They were immediately drenched like drowned rats. However, the two of them didn't notice their own situation at all. They only stared blankly at the colossus that had appeared in front of them. It was over 15 meters tall, with the head of a dragon and the body of a lion. Its entire body was covered in scales, and it had a huge mouth and two sharp fangs that flickered under the sunlight. Its appearance was hideous and terrifying. The monster shook its body, and another wave of water splashed over. Then, as if it had discovered something, it stretched its giant head towards the stairs. Shah Danon and Bay saw that the monster's head was much bigger than both of them. Under the sunlight, the sharp teeth were clearly visible. Watching it getting closer and closer, their hearts were really scared. They couldn't help but stick close to each other, their hearts beating fast. At this time, the young Taoist floated back, one palm in front of his chest, respectfully said, "Master Spirit, they are specially summoned by the masters." The monster stared at him with a chi sound, snorted, its pair of big eyes rolled, like a human thinking. Then it ignored the three people, staggered to the side, lay down on the dry ground next to the pool, yawned, lazily put its head down, basked in the sun, and fell asleep. The young Taoist signaled the two people to continue walking, said, "Master Spirit is an ancient beast that our faction's Master Greenleaf tamed 1,000 years ago, called Water Kirin. At that time, Master Greenleaf brought glory to Jadian, subdued the demons, it contributed a lot. Now it is our Jadian's guardian spirit beast, respectfully called Master Spirit." Then he saluted to the Water Kirin. Shah Danon was lost in thought, but was pulled by Bay. Seeing Bay winked at him, they also saluted to the Water Kirin respectfully. But the Water Kirin did not turn its head, did not move, but snored loudly, probably could not see it. After the three people saluted, they continued to walk. Walking through the high stone stairs, they could see the golden board, written with 3 words, Crystal Hall. Coming to the front of the Grand Hall, the door was wide open. Inside was full of light, worshipping Yuanshi Tianzuan, Lingbao Tianzuan, and Dao Tianzuan, the 3 pure deities. The atmosphere was solemn. And in front of the deities in the hall stood dozens of people, some Taoists and some common people, seemed to be Jadian's disciples. In front of them, there were 7 large sandalwood chairs, 3 on the left and 3 on the left, and 1 in the middle, but there were only 6 people sitting on it. Only the last chair on the right row was empty. Chapter 5. At this time, the people in the hall were talking, seemed to be discussing something. The young Taoist who led Shah Danon and Bay tidied his robe outside the door, respectfully said, "Head, Shirshu disciple Duo," following the order to bring the 2 little. Before he finished, suddenly in this sacred and solemn hall came a shrill cry. Interrupted him, "Ghost, evil ghost! Ghost!" Duo was surprised, but Shah Danon and Bay were even more surprised. Although the voice was shrill and unpleasant to hear, it was very familiar. Shah Danon rushed into the hall, shouted, Uncle Wong, is that you?" In his anxiety, his voice carried a bit of anxiousness, a bit of crying tone. Everyone saw it. Their hearts could not bear it. Behind the crowd, in the corner of the hall, a middle-aged man dressed like a woodcutter, hands holding his head, tightly curled up in the corner, his whole body trembling from the gap between his hands, came the voice of Ghost. Shah Danon and Bay immediately recognized this person as a woodcutter in Grass Temple Village, surname Wong, second in the family, kind, always smiling all day long, also very good to the children. Usually when he was collecting firewood in the mountain, he would bring some wild fruits to the children. Shah Danon did not think, rushed to Uncle Wong, grabbed his shoulder, loudly said, "Uncle Wong, what happened? Why are the people in the village all dead? Also my mother, my father, how are they? Tell me." Uncle Wong heard Shah Danon's repeated questions, seemed to be touched, temporarily stopped the ghost words, slowly raised his head, looked at Shah Danon in front of him. Everyone in the hall was immediately moved, and all of them quietened down. Even some of the people sitting on the chairs couldn't help but stand up and look over. Uncle Wong's eyes were red, full of fear and confusion. He looked at Shah Danon for a while, but did not say a word, frowned, seemed to be thinking about something. At this time, someone from Jadian could not help but step forward, was about to speak, but was quietly pulled by someone next to him. Sha Danan saw Uncle Wong, did not respond for a long time. Only looking at him lifelessly, his heart was very anxious, loudly said, "Uncle Wong, what happened to you?" Unexpectedly, as soon as Wong Urshu heard his loud shout, his whole body trembled. His face was full of fear. His whole body suddenly scrambled to the side. His hands clutching his head, he curled up into a ball. His mouth did not stop wailing, "Ghost, ghost, ghost." Sighs suddenly rose in the hall. Jadian people's faces were all disappointed. The people who just stood up also sat back down. Sha Danan was about to ask, but was grabbed by Bei. Sha Danan confusedly turned around and saw Bei with tears in his eyes. Sadly said, "It's no use. He has already gone mad." Sha Danan's mind exploded, stunned, unable to say anything. Lin Jingyu was 1 year older than him. His thoughts were more meticulous. He looked at the people in the main hall and saw that everyone was wearing Qingyun sect clothes. There were men and women, Taoist and secular. Most of them had weapons, and most of them were swords. Among them, there were 6 people sitting on the chairs. Their temperaments were outstanding and outstanding. Among the 6, there were 3 Taoists and 3 vulgar people, especially the one sitting in the middle, dressed in a dark green Taoist robe. With a sage-like demeanor, his eyes warm and bright, was naturally the famous Qingyun sect head, Reverend Daoxian. Bei did not say anything more, pulled Sha Danan, ran to the front of the 6 people, knelt down in front of Master Doyle Shun, kowtowed nonstop. Reverend Daoxian carefully looked at both of them, sighed, and said, "Poor children, both of you get up." But Bei did not get up. He raised his head to look at this celestial being and said in a sorrowful voice, "Jinren, the 2 of us are young and ignorant. With this sudden change, we really don't know what to do. You have remarkable abilities and can predict the past and the future. Please help us." Sha Danan wasn't as eloquent as him. Moreover, his mind was in a mess, and he said, "That's right, Granddad Deity, you have to make the decision." Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but smile. Sha Danan was speaking like an ignorant child, but then everyone's eyes fell on Bei. Bei was young and faced with such a big change. Facing Reverend Daoxian, this famous master, he still spoke in an orderly manner. This calmness was far better than a normal child. Not to mention Sha Danan, who knew nothing and still saw Daoxian as a celestial being. The Grass Temple Village tragedy was something that Jadian had never seen or heard of for thousands of years. It happened right under Jadian's feet. Jadian was shaken. After Reverend Daoxian received the report, he was shocked and angry. He immediately summoned the heads of the other 6 houses to discuss. At this moment, except for the head of Bamboo Height, Master Shuei, the other heads of the 5 houses were all present. To be able to be the head of Jadian's 7 houses, they were naturally the top figures in Jadian. And the top figures in Jadian were also the top figures in this world's cultivators and refiners. Everyone's eyes were like torches. At this moment, they all said in their heart, "What a beautiful piece of jade." Reverend Daoxian smiled, said, "I don't know about the future or the past, but you're living under Jadian's hill. Jadian will not ignore you. But I have a few questions to ask you. I hope you can answer them properly." Bei nodded. "Yes, disciple will tell you everything." "Reverend, please ask." Reverend Daoxian nodded, said, "How did you escape this?" Bei was stunned, said, "Reverend, last night, I still remember sleeping in my bed at home. But when I woke up this morning, I was lying under a pine tree with Xiao Fan. I don't know what happened. Then Xiao Fan woke me up. We ran back to the village. When we saw that scene, we fainted." Reverend Daoxian frowned, looked at Sha Danan, said, "You woke him up? What happened to you?" Sha Danan thought for a moment, said, "I don't know how I ended up there. When I woke up, I saw Bei was next to me, so I woke him up." Reverend Daoxian and the other masters looked at each other. Their eyes were filled with confusion. If there was a master who saved them, why did he only save these 2 children? If it wasn't, it would not make sense. Reverend Daoxian pondered for a moment, said, "That means you know nothing about what happened last night." Both of them said yes. Reverend Daoxian sighed, called Xavion. Disciple is here. A Jadian disciple answered. He was tall and sturdy, dressed like a commoner. He was standing behind a short and fat man. It seemed like he was that person's disciple. Reverend Daoxian said, You first found out about Grass Temple Village. Tell me what happened that day again. Xavion's voice was loud and clear, said yes. This morning, disciple and a few Shixians returned from a task. When we were flying over Grass Temple Village, disciple inadvertently looked down and found 200 bodies piled up in the village. It was a horrible sight. Disciple and others quickly went down to check. They only found the 2 children behind the village. They were unconscious, so a shitty brought them back. Then in the latrine of the village, he pointed at Uncle Wong, who was hiding in the corner, said, I found this person. But his eyes were dull, his mind was in a trance. No matter how disciple asked, he did not answer. He only repeatedly said, Ghost, ghost, evil ghost. Bei's body trembled, said with a trembling voice, Big brother, have you counted the number of people? Xavion's eyes were sympathetic, said, I found a shitty who usually trades firewood with your village. He is very familiar with the situation of your village. After his identification, we counted 42 families in Grass Temple Village, a total of 247 people. Except for the 3 of you, all are dead. Even though they already had a premonition, after hearing Xavion's confirmation, Bei and Sha Danan could not help but blacked out, almost fainted again. Reverend Daoxian sighed. His left hand flicked. A small red bead flew out from his sleeve and landed in front of Sha Danan and Zhang Danan. The bead rolled on their foreheads. Immediately a cool air entered their bodies. Somehow, the tension in their hearts loosened. They felt mentally and physically exhausted. They could not help but lie down in the hall and fell asleep. Chapter 6. Master Doyle-shun waved his hand. The disciples saluted, then left. There were only 6 of them left in the hall. At this moment, the short fat man said, Head Shixiang, you used the calming bead to calm them down temporarily, but after they wake up, what are you going to do with them? Master Doyle-shun pondered for a moment, then turned to the Taoist sitting first on the left, asked, Vas Kalo Shitty, what do you think? Master Vas Kalo was tall, solemn, the head of Jadian's dragon head peak. In Jadian, except for Master Doyle-shun, his dragon head peak was the most powerful. Vas Kalo was a serious person. Aside from managing his own disciples, he was also in charge of the punishment in Jadian. Jadian disciples respected head Master Doyle-shun very much, but the one they were most afraid of was this serious head Vas Kalo. Master Vas Kalo frowned. After a while said, There are many suspicious points in this matter. I'm afraid we can't find out the truth in a hurry. But Grass Temple villagers are simple. We can't ignore their orphans. I think we should take them as our disciples. Master Doyle-shun nodded, said, That's right, I also think so. These 2 children are lonely. We need to take care of them. But I haven't accepted disciples for many years. I wonder which shitty can take them as disciples. At this moment, the short fat man, the head of Jadian's Bamboo Peak Tianbelize, said, Head Shixiang, in my opinion, it's best not to let them be under the same master. Their background is very close. If they stay together, every time they see each other, they will remember the past. With such hostility, it will not be good for them in the future. Master Doyle-shun thought for a moment, said, Tian Shitty is right. They are both so young, but they suffered such a big change. We need to resolve the hatred in their heart. So it is not good to let them stay together. Then we need 2 shitty to take them in. Then he looked at the others. The other heads of the 5 houses, led by Vas Kalo, Tianbelize, and others all looked at Bei at the same time. No one paid attention to Sha Danan. On the path of cultivation, aptitude was extremely important. In the world, there was a saying that the enlightenment of a genius was better than 100 years of cultivation. And the people of Qin Yun's sect had a deep understanding of this. Back then, when Qin Yun's sect was at the end of its road, they could only rely on the extremely talented Qin Yi founder. Although he was young, his talent was outstanding. He deciphered the ancient scrolls of the predecessors, and his cultivation far surpassed the predecessors of the past. He made a small Jadian sect full of vigor and prosperity. and now he was the leader of the world's righteous path. Other than that, although it was hard to find a famous teacher, it was equally hard to find a talented disciple. Lin Jingyu's talent was outstanding and his bones were exceptional. The Qingyun sect's various branch leaders naturally took a liking to him at first sight. After a moment of silence, Tian Bui coughed once, said, "Haha, sect head senior brother, you know our big bamboo peak has always been small in number, then this time I will help you settle one." When he was about to point at Bei, the head of Sunrise Peak, Shang Zhengliang stood up first, stood in front of him, said to Master Doyle Shun, "Head Shi Xiang, when I saw this child today, I feel he is very congenial to me. I think we are fated to be together. Why don't you let him join my house?" Jadian has a long history. Every house appeared to be harmonious on the surface, but inside they are competing with each other. Seeing Bei's talent, no one can say for sure whether he will be the next Qingyi founder. Furthermore, taking in the worst disciple is only one more disciple, but will not let the other houses get the chance. With Master Doyle Shun's prestige and cultivation, no one dares to compete with him. But Doyle Shun himself said he will not accept. How can he miss such a good opportunity? Just as Shang Zhengliang finished, Sunset Peak head Taoist Tian Yun said, "Shang Shixiang, you already have 200 disciples. If every one of them is fated to be together with you, then your fate is too much." Shang Zhengliang blushed and was about to speak, but Tian Bui said, "Tian Yun Shixiang is right. Speaking about the number of disciples, you have at least 100, but our big bamboo peak only has 7. It is not good. Why don't—" At this time, Master Vasp Kalo interrupted him, said, "Tian Shitty, these 2 children have such a pitiful life. We must give them the best care and not care about our number." After speaking, he turned to Reverend Dao Xian, cupped his hands and said, "Sect head senior brother, this child is indeed a good material. Please let me take him in. I will carefully guide him, make him a talent to comfort the souls of Grass Temple Village." Master Doyle Shun pondered for a while. Tian Bui, Shang Zhengliang, and the others all knew something was wrong. After a while, Master Doyle Shun said, "Vasp Kalo Shitty is right. Then let him be your disciple." Vasp Kalo smiled, said, "Thank you, head Shi Xiao." Everyone saw it. They had been in the same sect with Vasp Kalo for a long time. They knew Vasp Kalo usually did not smile. Today his smile was already very happy. They could not help but feel annoyed. But Master Doyle Shun said it, and Vasp Kalo's dragon head peak was powerful. They could only swallow this anger. Doyle Shun paused, then said, "Then the other one." Shang Zhengliang coughed once, closed his eyes. Tian Yun looked at the ceiling of the main hall, as if he suddenly realized that the pattern there was especially beautiful. Tian Bui laughed dryly, suddenly felt sleepy, and was about to fall into a deep sleep. And the head of the Peak of the Wind, Teng Shuchang, who was snatched away before he could even get a word in, simply went into meditation, as if he did not care about what was happening here from the beginning. Only the victorious Master Vasp Kalo looked at everyone coldly, but his eyes were smiling. Master Doyle Shun could not help but feel a little embarrassed. But what kind of person is he? Of course he will not say, "You don't want this person with poor talent." Just a thought. He immediately found a scapegoat. Tian Shitty. Master Doyle Shun's smile was very kind. Tian Bai's heart jumped, immediately jumped up, was about to speak, but Reverend Dao Xian spoke first. "The Grass Temple Village incident was first discovered by your sect disciple Xavion. Seems like this child and your Big Bamboo Valley branch are still fated. Heh, you should take him as your disciple." Tian Bui was very anxious. Sha Danan's talent was average. He could see that easily. Taking him as his disciple would only be a burden. Of course he did not like it. He was about to argue, but Doyle Shun would not let him have the chance to speak. He said, "Well, this matter ends here. Should he also need to pay attention to this matter, understand?" Vasp Kalo and others stood up, said in unison, "Yes." Master Doyle Shun nodded, coughed a few times, did not look at Tian Bai's face, quickly walked into the back hall. After his figure disappeared from the hall, in Jadian's crystal hall, suddenly there was a loud laughter. Bamboo Peak's disciple Xavion had been waiting outside Crystal Hall. When the masters came out, he went to greet them, but saw his master Tian Belize was holding Sha Danan in his arms. He was startled, asked, "Master, what's wrong?" Tian Belize saw it was him. His heart was angry, said angrily, What? Are you an idiot? Why don't you take him?" Xavion quickly took the sleeping Sha Danan. Tian Belize was angry, but he saw Shang Zhengliang, Tian Yun, and others were still laughing. He was even more angry, shouted to Xavion, "Go! Why are you standing there in a daze?" Then, he did not care about anything else. His right hand drew a line in the air. A red light flashed. A red long sword was raised by him. Without seeing how he moved, he floated onto the sword, broke through the air, and flew away. Xavion was puzzled, but at least he knew he had Shitty. He looked at Sha Danan in his arms, couldn't help but said, "Shao Shitty, I still don't know what is your name?" Sha Danan was still in a deep sleep. He did not know his fate had turned into a big turn without him noticing. Chapter 7. Sha Danan slowly woke up, startled for a while, then slowly sat up. The past came to his mind like a tide, like a nightmare. "You woke up, that's good." A voice came from the door. A person came in. Sha Danan raised his head and recognized it was Xavion he met on Peak of Widows. He was tall and had a rough appearance. With his current state of mind, he felt a bit close to this person. "Song Dage," Sha Danan called. Although Xavion is a big man, his heart couldn't help but feel pity for Sha Danan. He walked to the bed, touched Sha Danan's head, said softly, "Shao Shitty, don't be sad. From now on, we are family." Sha Danan was startled, said, "What family?" Xavion smiled and told Sha Danan about Tian Belize accepting him as a disciple. Of course, he did not know about the little dispute between the elders of Jadian at Peak of Widows. Sha Danan was at a loss. Jadian, in the mind of a farmer's disciple, is like a god. He never thought that one day he will have the opportunity to enter Jadian. But the price is not what he is willing to pay. He gritted his teeth, knew it is useless to think too much, so he opened his mouth and said Song Shi Xiao. Xavion smiled and nodded, said, "Good. Shao Shitty, you slept for a day and a night. You must be hungry, right?" Sha Danan did not feel hungry at first, but after hearing what Xavion said, his stomach immediately grumbled. Xavion smiled. "Come, Shao Shitty, let's go eat something first. I will tell you about the faction situation, then we will go meet Master and Shenyang and meet other Shixiangs." Sha Danan nodded, got off the bed, then noticed that the room he was in was quite similar to the Jadian disciples' living quarters at Peak of Widows, but it was a bit more spacious. Song Daran took him out and said, "Our big bamboo peak is not like other branches. We have very few people. Even if you are added, the total number will not be more than 10, so the rooms are more spacious." As he spoke, he walked out of the door and saw a similar small courtyard. After taking a few more steps, he exited the courtyard and saw a winding corridor as well. However, this place was clear at a glance. There were only a dozen or so rooms, far inferior to the scale of the Peak of Tongtian. Sha Danan followed Xavion to the kitchen. From Xavion, he learned that Bamboo Peak, from Master Greenleaf's fourth disciple, Zheng Tong. Until now, Tian Bu Yi has 6 generations. The situation has always been like this. Now, in the generation of teachers, other than the head Tian Bu Yi, there was only another teacher uncle, Suru, who was also Tian Bai's wife. They had a daughter, Hidi, who was 13 this year, 2 years older than Sha Danan. So, Sha Danan was truly the youngest Shitty here. Among Tian Bai's disciples, Xavion was the de Shixiang, followed by Wu Dei, Zheng Dali, Idaji, Ladaxin, and Manla. Sha Danan remembered, "Oh, Dei Shixiang, Dali Shixiang, Daji Shixiang, Daji Shixiang, Daji Shixiang, Dashu Shixiang." Xavion smiled. "It's a manless Shixiang." Sha Danan was startled, then realized, couldn't help but ask, "Why is this 6th Shixiang different?" Xavion said, "Originally he was called Dashu, but you should say it a few more times." Sha Danan murmured, Amandla, Uncle Do." His heart understood and immediately laughed. Xavion also laughed. "You already know." In fact, Master didn't really care about it, but Shenyang was very angry. After several times, she said Du Shitty did not respect his master and wanted to teach him a lesson. Du Shitty was scared to death and quickly asked Master and Shenyang to change his name. Then Shenyang gave him the name Amandla. Say this name a few more times. Sha Danan whispered, Amandla, Amandla, gambling will always lose. He laughed and bent over. Xavion wanted to make him laugh and slightly reduce his sadness. Seeing Sha Danan was happy, he was also quite happy. He smiled. Six Shitty had a bad habit of gambling before he entered the sect. Later, by chance, he was brought up to the mountain by Master. Although he doesn't gamble anymore, he usually likes to gamble with others. Shenyang's action is also a warning. Sha Danan's childlike nature brightened up. His sadness faded a lot. Seeing Shi Xiang being so friendly, his fear of the future also slowly settled down. After eating in the kitchen, Xavion took Sha Danan to Bamboo Peak's main hall of observed silence. Qing Yun sect Big Bamboo Valley people from top to bottom, right now all gathered in observed silence hall. Here the floor was paved with red bricks, red tiles, and stone pillars. In the middle of the hall was engraved with a big Taiji diagram. Overall, it was very simple. There were 2 chairs in front of the hall, sitting 2 people. One was Tian Bui. The other was a quiet and dignified, beautiful woman, looked to be in her 30s, graceful and charming. Standing beside her was a little girl, delicate features, a pair of bright eyes, extremely lively, lovable. As for the other 5 male disciples, they were standing in a line. Some tall, some short, some strong, some thin. Their eyes were all on Sha Danan. Xavion walked to the front of the hall, said respectfully, Master, Shenyang, disciple brought Xiao Shitty here. Tian Belize snorted, a little impatient. Serene looked at Sha Danan, said, Darren, he slept for a day and night. I'm afraid he is hungry. You take him to eat something first. Xavion said, Shenyang, I have already taken Xiao Shitty to the kitchen to eat. Serene nodded. She looked at Tian Belize and did not say anything. Tian Belize snorted again, said, Let's begin. Sha Danan did not understand. Xavion whispered behind him, Xiao Shitty, quickly kneel down and kowtow to your master. Sha Danan immediately kneeled down. Dong dong dong. He kowtowed more than 10 times, loud and heavy. Ha. That little girl Hede could not help but laugh. Serene smiled. Good boy. Kowtow 9 times is enough. Sha Danan said, Oh. Then he stopped and raised his head. Everyone saw his forehead was red. They could not help but laugh. But in Tian Belize's eyes, he was even more stupid. Once he thought of teaching this kind of idiot, his head seemed to get bigger. All right, that's it. Tian Bai's mood was extremely bad. Waved his hand and said, Darren, you take care of him first, our sex rules, and also some entry-level skills. You teach him first. Xavion answered, Yes, then hesitated, said, But Master, Xiao Di is still young. The basic disciple's homework. Tian Belize rolled his eyes, said, Do it. Then he stood up and walked to the back of the hall without looking back. The disciples bowed together, said, Goodbye, Master. After Tian Belize left, before anyone could say anything, the little girl Hede had already flashed in front of Sha Danan. She stared at him. Sha Danan saw her lovely face swaying in front of him. Although she was young, she was already a beauty. When he was at Grass Temple Village, he had never seen such a beautiful girl of the same age. He could not help but blush. Hede was like she found a treasure. She pointed at Sha Danan and laughed. Shi Xiang, look, he blushes when he sees me. The hall burst into laughter. Sha Danan's face became even redder. Serene came over and scolded, Hede, don't bully Shitty. Hede made a face, but she did not take her mother's words to heart. She stood up and said to Sha Danan, Hey, call me Shiji. Sha Danan was angry, but Hede's bright eyes and white teeth floated before his eyes. He was confused and could not help but call out, Shiji. Tianlinger had always been ranked last in Big Bamboo Valley, and now that she had a junior brother who was younger than her, she was extremely happy. She immediately acted like an elder and said, Be good, little junior brother. In future you must listen to your senior sister. Sha Danan mumbled, Yes. Serene pulled her daughter, said, Don't mess around. Then she said to Xavion, Darren, Xiao Shidi is still young. The homework will be a little difficult for him. Take care of him. Xavion respectfully said, Yes. The other 5 disciples stood together and giggled. Their eyes darted around as if they were taking pleasure in the other party's misfortune. At this moment, Serene suddenly made a strange movement. She turned her head around like she was stretching her muscles. It was very different from her usual dignified temperament. In a short moment, Big Bamboo Peak disciples, including Xavion, stopped laughing. Each and every one of them was tongue-tied, as if a disaster was about to befall them. Serene cleared her throat, said, You all. Shenyang, a voice called out. It was Song Darren, with sweat on his forehead, shouting anxiously. Serene frowned, said, What? The other 5 Shidi said at the same time, Dashi Xiang, what are you doing? Xavion hurriedly said, Shenyang, Xiao Shidi has just entered the sect. Disciple is following master's order to teach him the rules and homework. I have to go now. Serene pondered for a moment, nodded. You are right. Go. What? The remaining 5 Shidi shouted at the same time. Xavion laughed dryly, picked up Sha Danan, did not wait for Sha Danan to ask, immediately went outside, said, Xiao Shidi, let Shi Xiang find a secluded place. First teach you the rules of the faction. Hidi smiled and followed. She felt it was very interesting. Someone behind her scolded loudly. Dashi Xiang, you are shameless. Coward. Sha Danan was puzzled. He thought, Dashi Xiang is teaching me the rules. Why is he being scolded as a coward? As he was thinking, Suru suddenly shouted. Her voice was clear and sweet, like ice cutting through snow. Shut up. The hall immediately fell silent. He heard Suru say, You bunch of good-for-nothings, as soon as you see that I'm going to test your cultivation, you become so scared. In another 5 years, it will be the 7 Peaks martial competition that is held once every 60 years. Last time, you 2 already made me and your master half to death. If we don't work hard this time, we will be humiliated to death by our peers. Come, all 5 of you come together. Xavion ran faster and faster. After leaving the hall, he went straight to the back of the mountain. Sha Danan was lying on his shoulder. The trees on both sides were moving backward at an extremely fast speed. Behind them, Hidi had taken out a vermilion jade silk. It was a light amber color, almost transparent. It emitted rays of red light. It was a fairy's esper. Hidi was leisurely standing on the vermilion jade silk. Her hand made a sign. The vermilion jade silk carried her into the air and followed closely behind Xavion. Sha Danan had never seen such a miraculous thing before. While he was surprised, he saw Hidi was flying with the wind, extremely elegant. His eyes were filled with envy. Hidi saw his expression. She was very proud. She rode the vermilion jade silk and walked next to Sha Danan. She said, How is it? Am I very good? Sha Danan nodded desperately, said, Yes, Shiji, you are very good. You can run so fast riding the red cloth. Tian Linger was stunned for a moment, and then realized what he meant by the red cloth rules. She was so angry that she spat, but could not help but laughed out. Big idiot. Sha Danan was puzzled. Xavion laughed. Xiao Shidi, what nonsense are you talking about? That phoenix silk is the esper that Shenyang practiced when she was young. It is very powerful. Even in Jadian, it is a famous fairy's esper. How could it be a red cloth? Then he laughed. Sha Danan's face turned red. He secretly looked at Hidi. She was smiling at him. 2 dimples appeared on her cheeks. After a while, the 3 of them came to a small hill. Xavion stopped and put Sha Danan down. Tian Linger also landed on the ground and stopped her hand gestures. The amber vermilion silk, as if it had a mind of its own, automatically rolled up and coiled around her waist. It looked like a beautiful red belt. The hill was full of bamboo. Some were thick, some were thin, forming a forest. It was very luxuriant. However, upon closer inspection, the bamboo here was different from the usual ones. The joints of the bamboo were all black. Xavion pointed at the bamboo forest, said to Sha Danan, Xiao Shidi, the rule of our bamboo peak is that the new disciples must come here every day to cut bamboo. You are still young. For the first 3 months, You can cut one bamboo every day. As for the thickness, it is up to you. When Shah Danan first heard that Serene needed Xavion to take care of Serene, he thought it was something difficult. Unexpectedly, it was just cutting wood. He was born in Grass Temple Village, a farmer. He also went up the mountain with the adults several times and cut wood. His heart was relieved. He smiled and said, "Dashi Xiao, I have cut wood before. Don't worry." Xavion looked at him. He wanted to say something, but stopped. He smiled and said, "That's good. We will walk back slowly. I will show you the way. Later, you can come here alone. I will also tell you the rules." Hidi smiled. "Dashi Xiao, why did you come so far in such a hurry? Instead of saying such irrelevant words, you still want to walk back slowly. Are you afraid of getting beaten by my mother?" Xavion's face turned red. He ignored her and said to Shah Danan, "Shao Shidi, remember, the first rule of the faction is to respect the master." Head of Jadian's Bamboo Peak, Tian Belize is lazy. Although he wants to save face, he is too lazy to discipline his disciples. After teaching them Taoism, he ignored them and let his disciples practice on their own. But his wife, Serene, was a strong-minded person and liked to fight. When she was young, she was famous. After she married Tian Belize, she became much more reserved. But one reason was that her hands were always itchy, and two, her disciples were not very good. Every 60 years, Jadian would hold the Seven Peaks tournament test. After a few times, Bamboo Peak disciples lost every time. Except for Dashi Xiao and Xavion, who occasionally won a match, the rest of the disciples all lost. They became the laughing stock of Jadian. Serene was strong all her life. How could she endure this? She often taught the disciples on behalf of her husband Tian Belize. Although her appearance was gentle and beautiful, her temperament was rather impatient, and her cultivation was extremely high. If she was not careful, she would beat these disciples until they covered their heads and scurried away like rats. Their bodies were covered with cuts and bruises, so that they feared this beautiful master's wife far more than their short and fat master. It was already late. The sun had set in the west. The sky was bright. The setting sun shone on Big Bamboo Valley, this one big and two small, unhurriedly walk toward the front of the mountain. From the houses in front of the mountain, a long barking was heard, mixed with some pitiful people's cries of pain. Chapter 8. At dinner time, the sky had already darkened. On Bamboo Peak, the back of the mountain was a bamboo forest. Everyone's buildings were at the front of the mountain. The largest and most important building was the main hall of Observe Silence. Tian Belize and his daughter lived in the back of the hall. Next to Hall of Observe Silence was the courtyard where the disciples lived. But because there were too few people, each of them had their own room. Even the newcomer Shah Danan had his own room. In terms of living conditions, Big Bamboo Valley was better than the other branches in the same sect. All that was left was the Taiji cave, the kitchen, and the dining room. At this time, all the disciples gathered in the dining hall. Sixth Amandla, who was in charge of meals, brought the dishes to the table. Most of them were vegetables, few of them were meat. All the disciples sat on the right side of the long table. Xavion sat at the front. Shah Danan sat at the end. At the head and opposite of the table, there was a large chair and two smaller chairs. It seemed like it was prepared for Tian Belize and his family. Shah Danan looked at the empty seat next to him. That was the seat of the busy sixth Amandla. After a while, Amandla finally finished serving the dishes. He washed his hands and returned to his seat, waiting for his master with everyone else. Amandla looked quite young. His face was thin and sharp. His eyes were large and triangular. He looked like a thief and very clever. After he sat down, he looked at Shah Danan, smiled. "Shao Shidi, what is your name?" Shah Danan honestly said, "Shah Danan." Amandla nodded, pointed to himself, said, "I am your sixth Shixiang, Amandla." Shah Danan respectfully said, "Sixth Shixiang." Amandla coughed, patted his shoulder, smiled. "Later, come and try Shixiang's cooking." Shah Danan saw the table full of delicious food. He could not help but swallow and nodded. Du Baishu suddenly laughed, with an ambiguous meaning, pointed to the entrance of the hall, said, "Little junior brother, later teacher Fu, teacher Nyang, and little junior sister will come in from there. Let's make a bed, okay?" Shah Danan was startled. The others all turned their heads and smiled. Fifth, Ladaxin, who was sitting on top of Amandla, laughed. Sixth, your gambling addiction is acting up again? Hidaji, who had a thin and capable face, laughed and said, it's been too long since he's won. Now he wants to lie to a kid? Go, go, go. Amandla waved his hand again and again, ignoring everyone. Face full of smile, said to Shah Danon, Shao Shitty, who do you think will be the first one to step into this door? Well, you've just entered the sect, so I'll let you guess first. Don't say that I'm bullying you. Second brother Wu Dei, who was sitting far away, called out loudly, Shao Shitty, even if it's a bet, you should first ask him what happens if he loses and what happens if he wins. Du Baishu snorted and said, are you all afraid that I'll go back on my words? I do Baishu, travel around the world, relying on my good gambling reputation in Jianghu. Everyone laughed. You have never won. Shao Shitty, if you guess correctly, I will help you chop bamboo for 10 days. If you lose, you will help me wash dishes for 10 days. How about it? Everyone laughed again. Xavion laughed and scolded. Useless. Shah Danon saw his Shixiaos were smiling kindly, their attitude friendly, not treating him as an outsider. His heart felt warm, said, okay. Amandla slapped his thigh. His whole body suddenly became energetic, said, Shao Shitty. Then you say Master Shenyang and Shao Shimmy, who will come in first. Everyone's eyes fell on Shah Danon. Shah Danon thought, Jadian pays great attention to Master. Tion Belise's master must be the first one to come in. He said loudly, I guess Master must be the first one to come in. Everyone laughed. Ladaxin shook his head, said, didn't expect to be tricked by sixth today. Amandla was overjoyed, looking at the confused Shah Danon, said, Shao Shitty, let me tell you, actually, every time Master's family comes in, Shao Shimmy is always the first one to come in. Ha. Later you will come and help me wash the dishes. Shah Danon touched his head, couldn't help but laugh, nodded. Yes, 6 Shixiao. Zheng Dali, who was the third child and looked short and strong, laughed and said, 6 brother, aren't you embarrassed? Amandla rolled his eyes, said, what are you talking about? Third, I didn't force you. Everyone is willing to lose, isn't that right, Shao Shitty? Shah Danon nodded. Suddenly heard Xavion said, Master is here. Everyone's face changed, stood up, facing the door, greeting their master. After a moment, Tion Belise's short and fat body appeared at the door. Then behind him there was nothing there. He had actually come alone. Everyone was stunned. Amandla couldn't help but ask, Master Shenyang and Shao Shimmy? Tion Belise glanced at him, said lightly, your Shenyang took Shao Shimmy back to her home. Everyone was surprised, but after a moment, someone couldn't help but laugh. Seeing Tion Belise walking in, Shah Danon's face was embarrassed, wanted to laugh but didn't dare to. Amandla was stunned. Tion Belise sat on his big chair, waved his hand, said, let's eat. The disciples then sat down. Each and every one of them looked at Du Baishu with a smile, yet not a smile. Tion Belise looked at Shah Danon, said to Xavion, did you tell him the house rules and commandments? Xavion nodded. Yes, 12 house rules and 20 commandments, I told Shao Shitty. As for the basic cultivation, disciple saw Shao Shitty is a bit tired today, so I plan to teach him tomorrow. Tion Belise nodded, said to Shah Danon, 7th. Shah Danon didn't understand. Amandla pushed him. Then he realized his master was calling him, quickly stood up and said, disciple is here. Tion Belise shook his head. His confidence in this slow disciple decreased a bit, said, you first follow to Shixiang. Remember to study hard. The sea of cultivation is boundless. Hard work is the boat. Even if your talent is a bit poor, but as long as you persevere, you may not be unable to learn, understand? Shah Danon respectfully said, yes. Tion Belise waved his hand. Eat. Shah Danon was young and short, holding a large bowl and sitting on the chair. He could not reach the food that was slightly further away, but Amandla, who was next to him, was quite kind and helped him several times, whispered with a smile, Shao Shitty, eat more. Looking at his appearance, he did not care about losing the bet. His gambling character was really not bad. Shah Danon was grateful, nodded, ate for a while, then secretly asked, 6 Xixiang. Amandla turned his head, said, "What?" Shah Danon said, "Shenyang still has a family?" In his little heart, Jadian people are all gods. There is no need to worry about the mortal world. Amandla smiled. Of course, Shenyang is also a human. But Master said Shenyang went back to her family. It is not really her family, but she went back to Bamboo Heights Shui Yushirshu's place. Shah Danon was surprised. What? Amandla lowered his voice, said, Shenyang was from Bamboo Height when she was young. She was Xixiang with the head of Bamboo Height. Shuiyu Master, their relationship was very good. Later, for some reason, Shenyang, a flower-like person, actually married Master. I heard that at that time. Many of the male Shirshu in Jadian couldn't get over it. Poof! A chopstick hit Amandla's forehead. The force was not light. His forehead turned red. Both of them were surprised. It was Tianbelis with an angry face. The chopstick in his hand dropped. Amandla turned to Shah Danon and stuck out his tongue. Both of them didn't dare to say anything, lowered their heads and ate. At this time, Xavion asked Tianbelis, Master, this time head reverend called for the 7 houses meeting. Why only Shui Yushirshu did not come? Tianbui snorted, picked up another pair of chopsticks, said, Isn't it that old nun who pretended to be sick, sent someone to tell sect head Xixiang that she had a headache and fever and couldn't come? Sect head Xixiang is really something. Actually believed it. If she came today, even if I can't get a good one, I might not be able to afford it. The 4th disciple, he dodgy coughed, whispered, Master, Shui Yushirshu's house never accepts male disciples. Chapter 9. Tianbelis paused, shook his head, said, In your Shenyang, once she heard Shui Yu had some problem, she immediately took Ling Air to see her. It was like the sky was falling. Really? The disciples looked at each other. Their faces were filled with joy. Xavion hesitated, then asked, Master, how many days did Shenyang stay at Shui Yushirshu's place? Tianbelis glared at him, snappily said, What, how many days? She went today, returned tonight. Alas, the disciples sighed, and all of them looked disappointed. Tianbelis looked around, snorted, said to Xavion, Today Shenyang guided you in cultivation again? Before Xavion could speak, 2nd disciple Wu Dei already said, Master, don't ask him. The Xixiang ran away today. So shameless. Xavion said angrily, Nonsense. I was ordered by Master to help Xiao Shidi. You. Everyone booed. The meal lasted for half an hour. After everyone left, Shah Danon wanted to stay and help Amandla wash the dishes, but Amandla smiled and said, Xiao Shidi, thank you, but I can do the things here. You won the bet. Don't worry. Tomorrow I will help you chop the bamboo. Shah Danon was embarrassed, wanted to say something, but Xavion's voice said, 6th, don't help him. Xavion came in from the door, said to Shah Danon, Xiao Shidi, come, I will take you to your room. Shah Danon nodded, but Amandla said, De Xixiang, what did you say? Xavion said, Xiao Shidi has just entered. Need to lay a good foundation, not the time to be lazy. Du Baishu scratched his head and said, That's true. How about this, little junior brother? This time I will owe you one. In the future, if you need me to do anything for you, just say the word okay. Shah Danon said, 6 Xixiang, how about we just forget about it anyways? Du Baishu's face turned solemn. With a strong sense of righteousness, he said, What are you talking about? How can I be that kind of person who cannot distinguish right from wrong, who do not distinguish between loyalty and treachery? Since I have promised you, naturally I will do it. If not, I will become a laughing stock and be ridiculed by the various senior brothers for nothing. Shah Danon nodded, but he still did not understand what this has to do with not distinguishing right from wrong, not distinguishing between loyalty and treachery. Xavion held Shah Danon's hand, said, Xiao Shidi, come, I will take you to your new room. When the two of them walked out of the kitchen, the sky had already darkened. A bright moon slowly rose and hung in the eastern sky. They walked past the entrance of the Hall of Quietude. Shah Danon looked inside and saw all the lights were out. It was dark. Only the moonlight shined in front of the hall. It was quite eerie. Xavion took him to the last room on the right side, said, "Shao Shitty, the room you woke up in during the day is my room. The other Shitty live on the right side. The 7 rooms on the left are empty." Pausing, he looked at Shaw Danon. "You live alone, are you afraid?" Shaw Danon shook his head. Xavion smiled. "That's right. We are men. How can we be afraid of loneliness? Come, let's go in." Then he took Shaw Danon into the room. Shaw Danon looked at this strange place that he will be with for a long time. A small yard, a pine tree on the left, 5 or 6 bamboo on the right, each as tall as 2 or 3 people. The yard was paved with small stone eggs. Both sides were lawns. The night wind blew. The leaves and bamboo swayed gently. The fragrance of grass came, very peaceful. Xavion opened the door, lit the light, said, "Shao Shitty, come in." Shaw Danon walked into the room. The furnishings were as simple as Xavion's room. Tables, chairs, bed, nothing else. Xavion said, "Today I have cleaned this place. You can stay here for now. Living in the mountain is hard. You are still young. Maybe you will feel lonely. But we are cultivators. We must endure all kinds of hardships. From now on, you'll have to do everything by yourself." Shaw Danon said, "Got it, to Shi Xiao." Xavion nodded, looked around, said, "If there is nothing else, I will go back. You have been tired for a day. Go rest early." Shaw Danon answered. When he saw to Shi Xiao to the door, he suddenly thought of something, said, "To Shi Xiao, why is it just dark? None of the Shi Xiaos come out for a walk." Xavion smiled and said, "You don't know, the least of us have been studying in this big bamboo valley for decades. We rarely go out. This big bamboo valley has long been familiar with it. That's why we're too lazy to go out. Lao Si loves to read. Lao loves to hum. The more diligent, like Lao San, will practice in the house. Usually do not come out." Shaw Danon understood. Xavion smiled and patted his head, told him a few more words, then turned and left. Shaw Danon returned to the house and closed the door. Suddenly, the whole world became quiet. There was no sound. He walked silently to the table and sat there for a while. Since he had nothing to do, he blew out the light, took off his coat, and lay down on the bed. He tossed and turned, and after an unknown amount of time, he fell asleep in a daze. In the darkness, Shaw Danon let out a low cry. He sat up, panting. Just now, he dreamt that he returned to Grass Temple Village, saw his father and mother, saw his children's playmates, as well as other uncles and aunts, all happy and harmonious. But suddenly they all became corpses, blood flowed like a river. It was extremely terrifying. His whole body trembled. He woke up. He sat on the bed for a while. His breathing calmed down. His eyes adapted to the darkness. He saw the window was slightly tilted. A beam of moonlight shone in. It sprinkled on the floor like snow. Shaw Danon was not sleepy anymore. He got up and walked to the door. Squeak! He opened the door and walked out. The surroundings were silent, but there was the faint sound of insects coming from an unknown place. One sound, 2 sounds, low and low. The moonlight was like water sprinkling down on his body. He raised his head and looked at the sky. The moon was bright and clear. "Don't know how is Jinyu now. Is he also unable to sleep?" He murmured in a low voice and sighed. He was about to turn around and go back into his room when he suddenly felt his chest loosen. Something rolled out from his underwear and fell to the ground. Shaw Danon was surprised. He bent down and picked it up. It was the dark purple bead. There was a small hole in the middle of the bead. It seemed like it was Posey who strung it on the jade bead. These days, he had already forgotten about it. Now he remembered that Posey told him to throw the bead away. Thinking of this, his heart suddenly felt bitter. His parents did not leave anything for him. Puji was not fated with him. But after one night of reunion, he was like a relative, and this ugly pearl was the only thing that Puji left for him. Shaw Danon raised his hand and held the bead up to the moonlight. Under the moonlight, the color of the bead became lighter, turning into light purple. He could vaguely see a light green gas rotating inside. It was like it had a spirit and was about to break out. But every time he got close to the surface of the bead, a small word lit up and blocked him. Shaw Danon looked at it for a while. He liked it a little bit. It was the only thing Posey left for him. He did not want to throw it away. After thinking for a while, he untied a red string from his neck. It was given to him by his parents to bless him with a long life and safety. Normal people would hang gold and silver locks, but his family was poor, so he could only use a red string instead. Immediately, he used a red string to tie the beads and hung them close to his chest. He did not feel cold, but he felt a bit warm. He smiled to himself, then looked at the moon in the sky. Then he went back to his room and went to sleep. His first day in Jade ended like that. Chapter 10. Shah Danan. A loud shout rang out. The voice was sweet but deafening. Shah Danan woke up from his dream, opened his eyes, and suddenly saw a big mouth, 2 rows of sharp teeth in front of him. He screamed in fright. Ah! Ha ha! A burst of laughter came from behind. Shah Danan finally calmed himself down and saw it was a big yellow dog, half the height of a human, with shiny yellow fur, lying on his bed. Behind the yellow dog, Jade was wearing a red dress. She was laughing so hard that her waist was bent over. Shah Danan peeked at the big dog. Its body was huge, its teeth were sharp, and its long tongue was sticking out. It looked very ferocious. He had never seen such a big dog. He was a little scared. Then he saw Jade smile, murmured, "Shaji, what is it? What is it?" Jade said with a smile. Then suddenly her face turned serious, frowned, and said loudly, "The sky is already bright. You still ask me, what is it? Get up. I will go with you to the mountain to chop bamboo." Shah Danan, startled, asked, "You want to go too?" Jade said, "Nonsense. The first 3 years of our house's disciples are required to chop black bamboo. I started when I was 10. This year is the last year." "Hey, are you still on the bed?" Shah Danan quickly answered, carefully went around the big dog, came down from the other corner of the bed, and hurriedly put on his clothes. Jade shouted, "Catch!" She threw a hatchet to him. Shah Danan caught it with both hands. It was a normal hatchet, quite heavy. "Ready," he said to Jade. "Shaji, do you want to ask the Shixiao to go with you?" Jade rolled her eyes at him, said, "Didn't you hear me say only disciples need to do homework? Now only you and I are going to chop bamboo. Let's go." Then he waved his hand. Before Shah Danan moved, the big yellow dog on the bed suddenly stood up, jumped off the bed, wagged its tail, barked at Shah Danan, showed its teeth ferociously, then ran out. Shah Danan thought it was familiar. Remembered he heard 2 barks yesterday when he came back with the Shixiao. It seemed it was this big yellow dog. He couldn't help but think, Jade is so powerful. Even the dog they raise is much bigger than the one in our village. He followed Jade out of the room. The sky was still early in the morning. Walking out of the corridor, looking at the back mountain, there was still a hazy fog floating between the mountains. 2 people and 1 dog walked to the back mountain of Bamboo Peak. Yesterday, Shah Danan was carried by Xavion to the hill. He thought it would not take long to reach there, and the road was easy to walk. But today, when he was halfway there, he found the slope was getting bigger and bigger. The distance was much longer than he imagined. On the other hand, Jade did not use the Phoenix Soul today, still walking very easily, the red petite figure swaying on a mountain path, very light. Needless to say, the big yellow dog was running back and forth, sometimes scurrying forward, sometimes slipping back. Sometimes, it even went into the forest beside the road. No one knew what it was doing, but after a while the sound of grass and trees could be heard, and it actually came out from another place, looking very lively and excited. After another half an hour, Shah Danan was so tired that he was panting, his legs were sore, very tired. Jade walked in front. Seeing him like this, she snorted, said, "Really useless, stop and rest." Shah Danan quickly nodded, sat down on the ground, gasping for breath. The big yellow dog was nowhere to be seen, no one knew where it went. Shah Danan breathed for a while, then gradually recovered. He sat on a mountain path and looked down. Big Bamboo Peak stood tall and straight. The surrounding mountains seemed to be a head shorter, giving off a sense of pride. "Shaji, I have something to ask you, don't know." Jade heard his timid words. A pair of eyes looked at him. Her heart was proud. Subconsciously smoothed her hair. Face serious, said seriously, "Ask away. Why do we have to cut bamboo as homework? I thought homework is cultivation." Jade curled her lips, said, "What do you know? For a cultivator, the body is the most important. My mother said if the body is not good, even if there is the best cultivation, It is difficult to practice. Our Jade originates from Taoism, extremely focused on health, cultivation to the depth. The body is even more important. Let's take one of our Azure Cloud sect's most powerful arts, the godly sword, lightning-wielding true art. Shah Danan's body shook, his face changed greatly. Hidi asked, "What's wrong with you?" Shah Danan came back to himself, his face uncertain, mumbled, "No, nothing. This name sounds very powerful to me." Hidi stared at him, said, "Of course it is powerful. This is one of our Jadian's ultimate skill. Not many people can practice it. I heard from my dad, to use this incantation, you must use yourself as the guide, use the celestial weapon, attract the ninth heaven's thunder, the bright divine power. It is really invincible. The power is unparalleled." Shah Danan sighed, said, "Yes." Tian Linger continued, "Then think about it. Although you have the true formula to protect your body, but with the power of the deity's thunder, once a normal person comes into contact with it, they will immediately turn into ashes. Although the practitioner's cultivation is extremely profound, but if his body is not well, in a short while, I am afraid he will be struck to death by the deity's thunder first, and still say he is invincible." She looked at Shah Dan and said, "That is why my dad asked you to do this homework is for your own good, but you still look unwilling." Shah Danan was surprised, quickly jumped up, said, "No such thing. I will not dare to have any disrespect to Master. There is no unwillingness. Ah, I have rested enough now. I will go now, go now." Then he picked up the hatchet, started running toward the mountain. His speed was not slow. Tian Linger looked at his back view, smiled lightly, and followed. Shah Danan was already out of breath when they finally reached the small hill. In front of the bamboo forest, a big yellow dog was already lying in front of the forest. Seeing them, it barked a few times but did not get up, turn its head back. Shah Danan was startled, said so fast, "Are you talking about Big Yellow?" Hidi walked up from behind, her face not red, not out of breath. Shah Danan pointed at the big dog, said, "It is called Big Yellow?" Hidi said, "Yes, don't underestimate it. It is very powerful." Shah Danan murmured, "Of course, look at its big size. It must have been raised for at least 20 years. Hidi said, "No way." Shah Danan curiously said, "It is not even 20 years. Big Yellow can really grow." At this time, Big Yellow barked fiercely at Shah Danan. Hidi said, "I mean, how can it be so young? Let me calculate. It seems like when 4th Shixiang came, it was already here. That is 70 years. No, 3rd Shixiang said it was already here when he came. That is 97 years. Ah." She suddenly screamed, surprised Shah Danan. He quickly asked, "What is it?" Tian Linger happily said, "I remember now. When I was young, there was a time when Mother and Father quarreled. Mother said something harsh, saying that she wanted to kill the yellow dog that Father had raised since it was young and make it into dog soup. Father was so angry that he almost died. De Huang was also so scared that he did not dare to go home for many days." Shah Danan was surprised, said, "Big Yellow did not dare to go home?" Hidi said, "Yes, Big Yellow has lived for many, many years. He understands human nature. He knew my mom is powerful, so he was afraid of being killed by her. So he ran away." "How is it powerful, right?" "Powerful," Shah Danan said sincerely, not sure if he was talking about Big Yellow or admiring Shenyang's method. He took a few more glances at the big yellow dog, which ignored everyone else. It snorted and wagged its tail, then turned its head and lay lazily on the ground. They had arrived at the bamboo forest. Shah Danan said to Hidi, "Shiji, when I just arrived at Peak of Widows, I saw a monster many times larger than Big Yellow. The Shixiang said it is called Water Kirin. Is Big Yellow also a spirit beast like it?" Hidi walked into the bamboo forest, shook her head. "No, Master Spirit is an ancient beast, ancient spirit species, far better than Big Yellow, cannot be compared." While speaking, she led Shah Danan through the forest. After a while, they came to a place with many thin bamboos. The black bamboo here was only the size of a wrist, very thin. "This is the place. For the next 3 months, you only need to cut one every day," Hidi said seriously. "Such thin, only one?" Shah Danan was surprised. Tion Linger snorted and said, "Try chopping it." Sha Danan nodded, picked up the hatchet, and walked to a thin bamboo. He examined it, then swung the hatchet. The hatchet was like hitting a stone. Sha Danan's hand felt numb. The thin bamboo was cut by him, tilted forward, then bounced back. Sha Danan could not dodge it. His head was hit by the bamboo. Painful, left a red mark. Tion Linger laughed, so hard that she bent over. After a while, she said with difficulty, "You can continue to chop here. I have to go do my own homework." After saying that, she turned and left with a smile. Sha Danan touched the place on his face where he was hit. There was only a faint white mark on the place where the bamboo was cut. He couldn't help but gasp. That morning, Sha Danan faced the black bamboo alone, chopping, sawing, grinding, pressing, bending, using all kinds of methods. After 4 hours, the sun was in the middle of the sky. His whole body was soaked in sweat. His hands and feet were sore and powerless, but he only managed to make a small hole in the black bamboo. At this moment, a song came. Jade was humming an unknown song and hopped back. She saw Sha Danan's embarrassing appearance, then looked at the black bamboo, shook her head, raised the hatchet, and was about to chop it. Sha Danan quickly said, "Shaji, what are you doing?" Jade said impatiently, "Helping you cut." Sha Danan shook his head, breathed heavily. "No need. Thank you, Shaji. But this is my homework. I will finish it myself." Jade snorted, pointed to the sun, said, "Do you know what time it is now?" Sha Danan was stubborn, gritted his teeth, said, "Even if I cut until dark, I will." "Idiot." Jade suddenly put her hands on her hips and scolded. Sha Danan was surprised, couldn't say anything, only stared at this Shaji. Jade was majestic, quite like her mother, said angrily, "Why don't you look at the time and don't think about other people? You cut until dark. Do you want me to accompany you until dark? If you really want to live up to your reputation, then you should work hard every day. Think of ways to finish your homework in 4 hours, instead of talking nonsense about cutting until dark." After she finished, the hatchet in her hand fell. The sound of the hatchet broke the air. 4 sounds. The bamboo fell. Sha Danan was stunned. Jade looked at him, said lightly, "Go back." Then she walked out of the forest. Sha Danan's heart was ashamed, decided to work hard and finish his homework in the future. Dragging her tired body back to Big Bamboo Valley residence. It was already noon. Tion Linger did not make a sound and walked towards the back of Observe Silence Hall. Sha Danan, startled, moved with difficulty to his room. At the door of the corridor, he saw that Xixiang Xavion was standing there. Xavion's smile said, "How is it, Xiao Shitty, tired?" Sha Danan forced a smile, shook his head. Song Darren saw that although he was young, his temper was quite stubborn. He couldn't help but laugh. He accompanied him to the room and said, "There is usually hot water in the kitchen. When you come back later, you can go get some water and wash yourself. After a while, it will be time for dinner. You rest first. I will come over to call you. After dinner, we still have to do homework." Sha Danan was surprised, said, "There is homework in the afternoon?" Seeing his big reaction, Xavion was startled for a moment. Then, he came to his senses and said with a smile, "Oh, I was wrong. The afternoon is the time for the disciples to practice Tao techniques. From today onwards, I will teach you some beginner Tao techniques." Sha Danan was relieved, surprised, and happy, quietly asked, "To Xixiang, are those cultivation very powerful, very difficult to learn?" Xavion smiled. "When a cultivation reaches the depth, naturally it will be very powerful. As for whether it is difficult to learn, it depends on the person's talent. But it doesn't matter if the talent is poor. You also heard what Master said last night. The sea of cultivation is endless. Hard work is the boat. As long as you are willing to persevere, practice hard, no matter how difficult it is, you can still learn it." Sha Danan nodded. During lunch, Tion Belize asked Sha Danan about his homework. Jade added oil to the fire and scolded Sha Danan. Sha Danan's face turned red, did not dare to raise his head. Tion Belize listened to his daughter's words, shook his head, waved his hand, said only 2 words, "Eat." Tion Belize was too lazy to scold Sha Danan, but in Sha Danan's eyes, he felt his master was very concerned about him. Even though he did not do well, his master did not scold him. He was very generous. He was really a rare kind master. He felt ashamed, but did not dare to say anything, only secretly vowed in his heart that he will practice hard in the future to repay his master's kindness. After the meal, Tian Bui, as usual, took his splayed steps, swaggered a few times, and then returned to his observed silence hall. The other disciples all went to Tai Chi Cave. Only Xavion and Sha Danan came to the room, said, "Xiao Shidi, our faction's cultivation is very important to the Foundation. You just entered the sect. I will first teach you the basic cultivation. After you memorize it, practice by yourself. If there's anything you don't understand, come ask me. Understood?" Sha Danan nodded. His heart was excited. Xavion's face turned serious, said, "There's another thing I have to tell you. Our faction's cultivation is profound and mysterious. Many evil spirits and heretics are spying on it. You need to make a heavy oath after learning it. Unless it is a disciple of the faction, you will not teach it to outsiders." Sha Danan's heart was moved, suddenly a little absent-minded, but immediately sobered up. His little face showed determination, said, "Yes. Heaven above, disciple Sha Danan. If disciple Sha Danan divulges the secret of Jadian's cultivation, he will be struck by lightning, die without a burial place." Song Daran nodded with a smile and asked him to sit down in front of the table. He first taught him how to meditate, then roughly explained the meridians of the human body and the circulation of profound qi. Finally, he taught him the cultivation method of the first level of Tai Chi Mystic Pure Path. The Tai Chi Profound Purity Tao was the foundation of the various wondrous techniques of the Azure Cloud sect, and it was comprehended 2,000 years ago by Qing Yun Zi from the Nameless Ancient Scroll. After experiencing the meticulous research of generations of Azure Cloud sect grandmasters, up until now, it had already become a peerlessly profound and supreme Tao art that sees the fortune of the heavens and the earth. The pure essence Tao was divided into 3 realms: Jade Clear, Shangqing, and Tai Ching. The disciples of the Jadian, including many intelligent people, could never break through to the Jade Clear realm. But even so, it was rare to reach the peak of the Jade Clear realm. In Jadian, there are nearly 1,000 people, but those who can break through Yu Qing and enter Shangqing, with Master Doyle Shun as the leader, there are only about 10 people. But with these 10 people, Jadian is one of the strongest and most profound factions in the world of cultivation. As for the legendary Supreme Realm, the Grand Clear Realm, it was rumored that only the peerless genius Green Leaf Ancestor had cultivated to it. Chapter 11. Xavion, as a teacher for the first time, saw Sha Danan holding his cheek. Fascinated by the lesson, he could not help but become interested in talking. The cultivation process of Tai Chi Mysterious Pure Tao started from easy to difficult. Most people could reach the first level of Yu Qing within the first year, but after that, the difficulty would start to show. Most people would need 5 years to reach the second level, and the third level was a watershed. Those with poor aptitude would be stuck there for the rest of their lives, and those with better aptitude would need 50 to 60 years. Sha Danan was tongue-tied. Xavion smiled and continued. The main cultivation methods of the Tai Chi Mystic Pure Tao were mostly taught at the third level. From then on, it depended more on one's own cultivation and aptitude. Masters with profound cultivation might give them some pointers, but those were just words of experience to help the disciples avoid some detours. Of course, the so-called detours are usually measured in hundreds of years. When pure essence reaches the 4th level of Yu Qing, it is the foundation of all methods. At the beginning, they can practice other magic and cultivate their own esper at the same time. Esper and secret artifacts have a long history. Most of the gods in the world have their own powerful artifacts. In the world of mortals, cultivators of the Tao of refinement were able to control the creation of heaven and earth at the beginning and possessed great power. The small ones could fly in the sky and move as fast as lightning. The big ones could even shake the heavens and earth and destroy mountains and sever rivers. The materials of the magic treasures were also varied and strange, but there was one point: the magic treasure's material determined the magic treasure's power after it was cultivated. If ordinary iron was used to display the divine sword-wielding thunder true formula, before it could attack the enemy, the sword and its master would already be turned into ashes. As for the Qing sect, because the founder of Qing Yi obtained the ancient sword Zhu Xian in the illusory moon cave, he relied on it to dominate the world and was almost invincible. Most of the younger generation admired him, and most of them practiced the celestial sword. 1,000 years later, there were many swordsmen, and it almost became an unwritten rule of the Qing sect. Even if it changed its name to the Qing sword sect, it was not wrong. But speaking of this, it was necessary to mention the head of Big Bamboo Valley, Tianbelis. He himself was a sword cultivator, and his defensive Esper Crimson Spirit was one of the famous swords in Jade. But towards his disciples, for some reason, he did not have the slightest intention to encourage them to cultivate the celestial sword. Not only that, he often encouraged them to cultivate some other Esper. This point was rather controversial in Jade. But firstly, there was no such rule to say no. Secondly, Tianbelis's disciples were mediocre and few in number, so everyone let him be. Among the disciples of Bamboo Peak, Xavion's cultivation is the deepest. He has practiced pure essence to the 5th level of Yuqing. Next is he Daji, who has reached the 4th level. Although he had been in the sect for a shorter period of time than Wu Dai and Zheng Dali, he was the smartest among the disciples, so he was the first to learn. As for number 2 Wu Dui, number 3 Zheng Dali, number 5 Lu Dixon, number 6 Du Baishu, they were all struggling in Yuqing realm 3rd level. But the youngest junior sister Tianlinger was exceptionally intelligent. Since young, she was carefully taught by her parents. Although she only started chopping bamboo when she was 10 years old, she had already practiced Tai Chi Xian Qing Wei for many years. At such a young age, when she was 13, she had already reached Yuqing realm 4th level and could use magical weapons. She was one of the famous precocious children in Qing sect. She was doted on by her parents and cared for by all the teachers. Suru even gave her own famous Phoenix Soul as a self-defense magical weapon. Shiji is so powerful. Sha Danan heard this and couldn't help but exclaim. Xavion smiled and said, "Yes, Junior Martial's sister is extremely intelligent and talented in the path of cultivation. Whatever master and mistress teach her, she can understand it as soon as she listens. Her aptitude far surpasses us senior martial brothers. Right now, her cultivation is just shallow, and she is not mature enough. In time, her achievements will be limitless and far surpass us. The glory of Big Bamboo Peak is all on her shoulders." After saying that, his eyes were filled with expectation. It was obvious that he loved this delicate and lovely junior sister very much. Then Xavion told Sha Danan some things to pay attention to in the process of cultivation. Finally, he said, "Xiao Shidi, there's one last thing I must tell you. In our faction, cultivation is important step by step. If you are greedy, you may not be greedy enough and bring disaster to yourself. Success or failure, it is fate. There's no need to force it. Like evil spirits, heresy, they want to achieve quickly. In the end, they will be punished by God. Pitiful and sad. You need to be careful." Sha Danan was surprised, quickly said, "Yes, De Shi Xiang, I understand." Xavion nodded, stood up, said, "That's it. Tai Chi Cave is at the back of the mountain. Only disciples who have cultivated pure essence to level 3 or above can enter. Before that, you should stay in your room and practice. It is very quiet here. Master and Shenyang usually don't come here. You should work hard." Sha Danan stood up, said, "Thank you, De Shi Xiang." Song Darren smiled, patted his head, turned around, and left. Sha Danan sent Xavion away, returned to his room, and closed the door. His heart was filled with unspeakable excitement. Even the tiredness from chopping bamboo in the morning is gone. He took a deep breath, calmed down, and slowly walked to the bed. He sat in meditation according to the posture taught by Xavion, closed his eyes, and went through the first level of the Yu Qing stage of the Tai Chi Xavion taught him from beginning to end. Just as he was about to practice according to the instructions, he suddenly opened his eyes and cried out, "Something's wrong." The first level of the Yuqing realm that Song Darren taught him was the most basic cultivation method in the Tai Chi Xianqing Dao. Its function was only one word: cultivating qi. Cultivators, while meditating, let go of all the worries in their mind, lead the spirit of the world into their body, circulate it, and feel the world's creation. If they can lead the spirit to circulate 36 circulations in their body, their meridians will be stabilized and can cultivate to a higher level. This incantation is the incantation practiced by Taoism for thousands of years. There is no mistake. But at this moment, Sha Danan's heart is like a storm. All of this was because what he heard today, compared to the set of incantations that Puji monk taught him that day, the cultivation method was completely opposite. The night before the Grass Temple village tragedy, when Puji was teaching him the incantation, he clearly told him that when cultivating and refining qi, he must cut off all connections between himself and the outside world to comprehend his own nature. That is to say, all dharmas are empty, neither born nor destroyed, neither dirty nor clean, neither increasing nor decreasing. Therefore, there is no color, no feeling, no thinking, no knowing, 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 no knowing. Note: the words are from the Prajna Heart Sutra. Such profound truth, Sha Danan could not understand it clearly, but the two incantations are fundamentally different. He can tell them apart. His heart was confused, did not know what to do. In fact, Sha Danan did not know that pure essence was the supreme magic of Taoism, but Posey had placed his life's hope on him. The incantation he taught him was also the supreme magic of Buddhism, Fawn wisdom. Two great incantations, two completely different incantations, but it must be explained from the root. Buddhism and Taoism have a long history, never contact each other. Cultivation also originated from their schools of thought. Take Taoism as an example. Its main theme is the word Tao. It is said, Tao begets one, one begets two, two begets three, three begets all things. All things bear yin and embrace yang. The middle energy is harmony. Note: the words are from the 5th chapter of De Jing. Taoism, on the other hand, originated from Taoism. Even the 3 realms of Tai Chi Xianqing Dao were named after Yuanshi Tianzuan, Lingbao Tianzuan, and Dao Tianzuan's Yuqing, Shangqing, and Tai Qing, which were commonly known as the 3 pure ones. Taoism cultivation is about sharing the breath of heaven and earth. The body is one with nature, using the body to control nature and turn it into great power. On the other hand, Buddhism's main theme is everything should be born without a place to stay. All things do not leave one's nature. It also says, what is self-nature is pure. What is self-nature does not have life and death. What is self-nature is self-sufficient. What is self-nature is unshakable. What is self-nature can give birth to all things. Note: the words are from Altar Scripture, Xingyo Pin number 1. Buddhism cultivation, focus on understanding oneself, see the 5 skandhas, can give birth to 84,000 wisdom. This is the reason. Buddhism and Taoism thoughts are completely different. The incantations are naturally also opposite, but for thousands of years, Each kept their secrets. No one knew about it. At this moment, on Jadian's bamboo peak, a small disciple Shah Danan was troubled by this matter. Chapter 12. Which one is right? Shah Danan jumped off the bed, paced back and forth in the room. His mind was in a mess, but he did not dare to ask anyone. Finally, he sat on the bed, sighed, unable to make a sound. He was not a smart person. He was born in a farmer family, young, and did not have much experience. He thought for a long time, but still could not come up with a reason. In the end, Shah Danan said to himself in his heart, "Never mind, Master Posey did not mention this kind of situation. I will cultivate both at the same time." He did not think anymore. His heart was relaxed. He went back to the bed, meditated, and practiced pure essence. It was easy to think, but it was a completely different situation to do it. Pure essence cultivates energy, needs to open the pores of the 7 apertures of the body, guide the spirit into the body, circulate it through the channels, to stabilize the body's energy and channels. Fine wisdom requires to enter the state of nirvana, close the body's thoughts and consciousness, use the body as a world, see one's own nature, use the true essence in the heart, solidify the foundation. The two techniques were completely opposite, but it made Shah Danan miserable. In the next 3 months, besides going up the mountain to chop bamboo, he focused on practicing these two techniques. It was just that he had just achieved a small success in cultivating the Tai Chi mysterious pure Tao. All the apertures in his body had just opened and spiritual Qi entered his body. Following that, he had to forcefully close all the apertures in his body to cultivate the Brahman wisdom and enter the state of nirvana. He couldn't help, but almost all his previous efforts were wasted. 3 months later, one day, Tian Belisa suddenly came to investigate Shah Danan's cultivation situation. Unexpectedly, when he asked and tried, he was angered half to death. According to common sense, when normal people practice pure essence, with the first level, after 3 months, they should be able to guide the spirit into the body and circulate it 3 to 5 times. But Shah Danan's talent was so bad, it was really rare. After cultivating for 3 whole months, he was still unable to control the acupoints in his body freely. As for guiding spiritual energy into his body, it was even more difficult for him, let alone circulating it a few times. Tian Belisa opened his eyes wide, angrily staring at Shah Danan. The other disciples were sympathetic, but did not dare to say anything. Xavion wanted to say a few words for Shah Danan, but seeing his shitty had reached such a level, he felt ashamed and did not dare to say anything. As for Hidi, she was laughing at the side. Shah Danan's face was full of shame. He knelt in front of Tian Belisa. He thought no matter how his master scolded him, it was what he deserved. Unexpectedly, after waiting for a long time, the surrounding Shixiang did not make a sound. Even Tian Bui did not say a word. He felt strange, secretly looked up and saw Tian Bai's face full of anger, unknowingly turned into disappointment, really answered one sentence. There is nothing more sorrowful than a dead heart. Tian Bui flicked his sleeves, shook his head, moved his short and stout body, without saying anything, walked towards the back hall. The disciples looked at each other in confusion. Xavion had followed Tian Bui for the longest time. He vaguely knew what Tian Bui was thinking. He guessed that his master had given up on this Xiao Shitty. For the past 3 months, besides practicing, Shah Danan was always busy, willing to help others, honest, everyone liked him very much. Living in a mountain was lonely. Even the arrogant Hidi suddenly had a playmate close to her age. Although she often scolded him on the surface, her heart was somewhat happy. Xavion frowned, helped Shah Danan up, said, "Xiao Shitty, Master was just angry for a moment. It doesn't matter. As long as you practice hard, sooner or later you will get his approval." Shah Danan was ashamed, nodded, and worked even harder. Every morning, he went up the mountain with Hidi to cut bamboo. Normal disciples can cut black bamboo after 3 months of practice, but Shah Danan only cut the first black bamboo after half a year. But every day, regardless of rain or shine, his body was quite strong. At least when he went up the mountain, he would not pant like a cow. Since then, Tian Bui did not care about Sha Danan. Xavion asked him several times about his practice, but as time went by, Sha Danan's progress became slower. In the end, even Xavion was discouraged and did not ask him anymore. Sha Danan himself did not care about it. He knew his talent was not good, although he sometimes thought it was because he practiced two methods at the same time, but every time he thought about it, he would think of Master Posey's voice. His heart warmed, and he persevered. Although the training along the way was incomparably difficult, he was persistent and stubborn, so he managed to persevere. He lived in a secluded place. During the day, he practiced pure essence. At night, he practiced fawn wisdom. Time passed by quickly. 3 years had passed. During this time, Sha Danan set the worst record in Jadian. He used 3 years, that is to say, 3 times the time of ordinary people, and finally completed the first level of pure essence Yuqing. He could control all the pores in his body, draw the spirit into his body, and circulate it 36 times. But what everyone didn't know was that he had also cultivated the great Brahman Prajna at the same time, and his control of inner chi had also reached a new level, and he had built a solid foundation. When Sha Danan shyly announced it to everyone during dinner one day, Jadian's Bamboo Peak disciples were stunned, as if they saw a 1,000-years-old iron tree blossoming. Then everyone laughed. Xavion picked up Sha Danan, who had grown up a lot, and threw him into the air. He was very happy. Tian Bui, who was sitting in front, looked at them coldly, snorted and scolded. Idiot! In these 3 years, Sha Danan grew to 14 years old. Because he chopped bamboo every day, his body was quite strong. Although he was 2 years younger than Shiji Hidi, they were already the same height. Tian Linger, on the other hand, from a 13-year-old little girl, had grown into a 16-year-old girl. Her appearance was even more gorgeous. In her laughter, her elegance was incomparable. Tian Linger had always felt that the other 6 senior brothers were too much older than her, and were arrogant and old-fashioned, so she always liked to stay together with this simple-minded junior brother, and after 3 years, they were very close. But it was always Hidi who had the upper hand. Sha Danan felt his Shiji was much stronger than him, although she always ordered him around. But when he was teased by his Shi Xiang, she was always the first to stand up for him and support him. The mountain was lonely, but also quiet. Sha Danan asked Tian Bui and Xavion several times about the Grass Temple Village massacre, but there was no clue. After a long time, Sha Danan's heart finally calmed down. This morning, Sha Danan brought his machete, walked out of the house alone, and went to the back of the mountain. Hidi had finished her bamboo training 2 years ago, so Sha Danan went up the mountain alone most of the time. But sometimes when Hidi had nothing to do, she would come up the mountain and play with him. Today Sha Danan did not see Hidi, but he did not care. He went up the mountain alone. After a month, he will also finish chopping bamboo. He could chop 2 black bamboo every day, but it was still far less than Hidi. When Hidi was finishing, she could chop more than 10 black bamboo in a day. A month ago, he finally mastered Pure Essence's Yuqing first level. Then Xavion taught him the secrets of the second level. He practiced for a month. Although it was a lot more profound than the first level, he felt it was easier than the first level. For example, the first level is to control all the pores of the body. He practiced for 3 years before he could achieve a small success. The second level is to turn energy into essence, turn the spirit into essence in the body. According to the Shi Xiang, this level is more than 10 times harder than the first level, but Sha Danan felt it was surprisingly easy. The root of it seems to be related to fawn wisdom. For the past 3 years, he had been practicing fawn wisdom every day without stopping. His internal energy had already reached a certain level. Essence belongs to the internal energy. With the 3 years of foundation, Sha Danan's progress was very fast, but he did not believe himself. When others practiced for a year, he needed to practice for 3 years. This time it was most likely an illusion, so he did not care. Every day he practiced, no one came to bother him. Chapter 13. Sha Danan climbed up the mountain and came to the familiar bamboo forest. The mountain was covered with green, layer upon layer. The wind blew, the bamboo sea rose and fell like the waves of the sea. His mind was immediately broadened. He took a deep breath of the fresh mountain air, stretched his body, and walked into the bamboo forest with the hatchet in hand. The place he was heading to now was different from when he had first arrived 3 years ago. It was the deepest part of the bamboo forest. There were many large bamboos there, and the bamboo was even harder. In the early morning, a light mist floated in the forest like a veil. On the green bamboo leaves on both sides of the path, there were crystal-clear dewdrops, beautiful and pure. After walking for a while, he found himself in the middle of a green sea. Most of the black bamboo here were tall and had luxuriant branches and leaves that pierced straight into the sky. Light shone through the gaps between the branches and leaves, leaving patches of shadows on the ground. Shah Danon looked left and right, picked up a big black bamboo, drew a picture, then raised his sword to chop. Poof! Suddenly a muffled sound. Shah Danon felt a pain in his head. Something hit his forehead. He looked down and saw a pine cone rolling on the ground. This place was surrounded by black bamboo. There were a lot of bamboo shoots, but definitely no pine cones. He thought for a moment, and a smile appeared on his face. He looked around and shouted, "Senior sister, is that you?" His voice traveled far into the bamboo forest, but no one answered for a long time. Shah Danon knew his Shaji was always mischievous and liked to tease people. Just when he was about to shout again, his head suddenly hurt again. It was extremely painful. He was hit by a pine cone again. Above his head, there was a squeak, squeak, squeak sound. Shah Danon endured the pain and looked up. On the black bamboo, there was a gray monkey holding several pine cones in its hand. Its tail was hanging upside down on the bamboo branch. It was laughing shrilly, as if it was taking pleasure in Shah Danon's misfortune. Shah Danon was startled. For the past 3 years, he had never seen a monkey in the bamboo forest. Bamboo Peak was mostly covered with bamboo forest. Only a pine and cypress forest was in the deep valley. It seemed like the monkey lived there. Why did it come to the mountain today? Big Bamboo Peak was tall and precipitous. Although it was not as high as Tong Tian Peak, it was still straight into the sea of clouds. Climbing up from the foot of the mountain, there was almost no way to go. Qing Yun's sect disciples mostly flew up. Shah Danon's cultivation is shallow. Aside from chopping bamboo, he also heard his Shixiangs talk about it. In the deep valley behind Bamboo Peak, there's a forest of pine and cypress trees. It is deep and unfathomable. Back then, Big Bamboo Valley's founder also sent people to explore the deep valley, but it was only a primeval forest and nothing strange happened. Instead, there were more ferocious beasts and poisonous insects, but they never left the valley, so all these years it was peaceful. As he was thinking, he suddenly saw the monkey raise his hand. His heart skipped a beat, and he quickly moved his hand away. Sure enough, another pine cone came crashing down. If he didn't dodge, he would suffer again. The gray monkey screamed when he saw Shah Danon dodged. It seemed to blame Shah Danon for dodging. Shah Danon made a face at the monkey, ignored it, and walked away. He thought it was rare for the monkey to hit people for fun. What an ignorant beast. He took 2 steps, suddenly heard the sound of the wind behind his ear. Poof! The back of his head was hit by the hard pine cone. This time the forest was not light. Shah Danon could only feel his vision darkened. He could not help but cry out. The monkey was clapping and laughing on the bamboo branch, swaying back and forth very happy. Shah Danon was furious. He rushed toward the bamboo and shook it violently. The large black bamboo swayed left and right. But the gray monkey only wrapped its tail around the bamboo and let Shah Danon shake it. It was not afraid at all. Instead, it kept squeaking and laughing. Shah Danon saw he couldn't do anything to the monkey. He was even more angry. He pulled out the hatchet and chopped at the bamboo. The monkey was not afraid at all. It only looked at him with interest from the bamboo. Shah Danon's head was sweating. When he was about to succeed, he suddenly heard a scream from the bamboo. He looked up and saw the gray monkey swung its tail and jumped to another black bamboo. Then it threw a pine cone down. Shah Danon was angry. He didn't care if the monkey could understand. He pointed at it and shouted, "If you have guts, come down." The gray monkey scratched its head and thought for a long time. It probably still didn't understand what guts meant. It just laughed and made a face at Shah Danon. Shah Danon was angered to death, but there was nothing he could do. That day he barely finished his homework, but his head was hit by the monkey 7 or 8 times. It was very painful. Shah Danon was filled with anger. He went down the mountain and ignored the monkey. Unexpectedly, the monkey was addicted to it. It waited in the bamboo forest for several days. Once Shah Danon came to cut bamboo, it would hit him for fun. It was very happy to see Shah Danon's angry face. Before dinner, Jade pulled Shah Danon aside and secretly asked, "Shao Fan, what happened to your head?" Shah Danon had been bullied by the gray monkey for several days. His head was hit black and blue. It was very painful, but he felt it was embarrassing to be played by a monkey, so he didn't tell anyone. Now that Shiji asked, he hesitated, then told her. Tian Linger's red lips flattened. She could not help but laugh out. 2 little dimples appeared on her cheeks. She was really beautiful. Shah Danon seemed to be teased by her or something else. His face became hot, and he lowered his head. Jade patted Shah Danon's shoulder, said, "Don't worry, Shao Shitty. These days, Mother wants me to practice in the Tai Chi cave to prepare for the 7 Peaks tournament in 2 years. I didn't expect you would be bullied by a monkey. Don't worry. Tomorrow I will accompany you up the mountain and teach that bad monkey a lesson." Her tone was like an elder coaxing a child, but Shah Danon was used to it. He smiled bitterly and didn't mind. The next morning, Jade really got up early and went to the back mountain with Shah Danon. The cool mountain breeze blew gently. Tian Linger was dressed in red, just like when she and Zhang Xiaofan went up the mountain to chop bamboo for the first time, skipping and walking in front. Shah Danon followed. The beautiful girl in front of him was like a red cloud, gently floating in the mountain. With the mountain wind, there seemed to be a faint fragrance. His heart was in a trance. He suddenly had a feeling that he could walk down like this forever. When he was lost in thought, Jade was already far away. She turned her head and shouted, "Shao Fan, why are you so slow?" Shah Danon woke up. His face blushed. He didn't dare to think more and quickly caught up. They came to the bamboo forest. Jade said to Shah Danon, "Shao Fan, you go in first. I will follow behind." Shah Danon nodded. He took the hatchet and went in. After a few steps, he suddenly remembered he should tell Jade to be careful. He turned around, but she was already gone. He was startled. There was an inexplicable confusion in his heart. Then he shook his head, threw away those boring thoughts, and walked into the bamboo forest. When they arrived at the destination, the forest was quiet. Shah Danon looked around, but he couldn't find the gray monkey. He whispered in his heart, "Don't let the monkey know that he found a helper and didn't dare to come." He thought to himself and looked around, but he could not find any trace of the monkey. It was useless, so he walked over to a black bamboo and pretended to chop it down. Squeak, 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 squeak. Suddenly, a familiar scream came from above. Shah Danon jumped away reflexively, but his head was in pain, but it was too late. He was hit by a pine cone, very painful. Shah Danon lifted his head and saw the gray monkey was hanging upside down on the bamboo, as usual, laughing. His heart was filled with joy. He jumped up, pointed at the monkey, and laughed. "Haha, you finally came." His voice was not loud, but the monkey was surprised by him. He thought that this person was usually angry when he was hit. Why was he so happy today? Could it be that after being hit by me for a few days, he got addicted to it? If he didn't hit, he would feel uncomfortable. But when it hurts, he is happy. Just at this moment, a red shadow suddenly flashed in the middle of the bamboo forest. Tian Linger stepped on the amber vermilion silk, flew through the air as fast as lightning. Her 5 fingers formed a claw, grabbed towards that monkey. Unexpectedly, the monkey was extremely quick-witted. With a glance from the corner of its eye, it immediately reacted. Its tail that was wrapped around the bamboo branch immediately loosened, and its entire body fell down. Tian Linger had calculated all the directions that it would escape to in order to chase after it, but she did not expect that the gray monkey would actually fall down. She could not help, but was startled for a moment and grabbed onto empty air. Chapter 14. Shah Danon was about to move on the ground, but the monkey in midair stretched out its monkey arms, grabbed the bamboo, immediately attached itself to it, then stopped without hesitation, as if it knew the strength of the lady in red, immediately shook and jumped, from one bamboo to another, then to the next, intending to escape. Tian Linger's competitive spirit was aroused. She shouted in mid-air, "Chase!" Her left hand led. Phoenix Soul broke through the air. Sha Danon ran on the ground, striding after it. If it was on the open ground, with the speed of Phoenix Soul, Hede would have caught the gray monkey in no time. But now in the dense bamboo forest, it was a big hindrance. The gray monkey was very smart. It never ran in a straight line. It swayed left and right, twisted and turned, running forward. Hede had to pay attention to the monkey's trail, and at the same time she had to watch out for the black bamboo. It was a big trouble. As for Sha Danon, he could only anxiously chase on the ground, unable to help. Two people and one monkey chase like this. With the squeak, squeak, squeak of the gray monkey, Sha Danon's breathing was getting heavier. He felt tired. He thought they had chased for a long time. But the green bamboo forest in front of him seemed to be endless, layer by layer coming at him. Sha Danon's mouth was dry. Suddenly a gray shadow flashed in front of him. It fell straight down. He was overjoyed and immediately became spirited. A burst of energy rushed up, and at this moment, Tian Linger suddenly shouted anxiously, "Careful!" In front of Sha Danon, a cliff suddenly appeared. Sha Danon quickly pulled back his feet, almost fell down. He calmed himself down and saw that there was a deep valley below the cliff. Far away in the valley, there was a thick fog, so he could not see clearly. But near the valley walls, there were no longer black bamboo, but all kinds of wild trees, mostly pine and cypress. Turned out they had chased all the way to that deep valley at the back of the mountain. Sha Danon saw the gray monkey falling down. He used the same trick in mid-air, grabbed the tree branch. His body swayed and floated, neutralizing the falling force, and escaped forward. While he was in a hurry, suddenly he heard the sound of breaking air. He raised his head and saw Hede's red dress was floating, flying in the air, holding out a jade-like hand to him, said, "Come up." Sha Danon did not think too much, reached out his hand and grabbed Hede. Hede pulled him onto the Phoenix Soul. Phoenix Soul immediately sank, but immediately returned to normal. It was the first time Sha Danon had such an experience. He did not know what to do. Hede pulled him behind her, said, "Hold my waist, quickly." Sha Danon did as told. Hede hurriedly flew the Phoenix Soul. The red shadow passed. The two of them, riding Phoenix Soul, rushed into the deep valley, chasing after the gray monkey. The wind was cold. Sha Danon could only hear the whistling sound. He could not even open his eyes, but the Phoenix Soul under his feet was soft but not soft. It made people feel like they will fall if they are not careful. He was a little scared, couldn't help but hold Hede tighter. The red dress was like the clouds floating in front of him. His Sheji's figure was like a fairy from the ninth heaven, very beautiful, and there was a light fragrance floated into his nose. His heart was filled with joy. Really hoped that this time will not pass by for the best. Hede did not know the little boy's strange thoughts behind her. His heart was all on the gray monkey in front of her. She was usually loved and praised by her parents and Shixiang's. Her temperament was quite proud. Now she could not catch up with a monkey. That is absolutely unacceptable. So in the deep valley, between the shadows of the trees, the gray shadow was in front. The red shadow was chasing, circling, running, chasing. After chasing for another half an hour, the gray monkey didn't seem to be tired at all, and it was still running very fast. But after such a long chase, Hede had gradually become familiar with the method of shuttling through the forest. She was getting closer and closer. The gray monkey ran all the way into the deep valley. Sha Danon looked forward from behind Hede, saw the trees in front of him were getting thinner. Light came through. It was an open space. There seemed to be the sound of water. The gray monkey's scream became more urgent. It did not expect the two of them would not give up after such a long time. But there was no way back. It had to desperately run forward. Not long after, the front suddenly brightened. It really was an open space. The ground was full of gravel. There was a small pond in the middle. The water rippled, flowing to the west. When the gray monkey ran to here, it obviously hesitated, but the sound of breaking air behind it was coming. It had to land on the ground and run forward again. But for some reason, its pace became very slow. It did not look like it was running, more like taking a walk. Even so, it still moved forward step by step. Shah Danon saw it. His heart was strange, but Hidi needed to quickly avoid the obstacles and also pay attention to the monkey's trace. All her mind was highly concentrated. How could she think so much? Seeing the gray monkey was in front of her, she was overjoyed. With a shout, she drove the silk straight into the open space, rushed toward the gray monkey. Seeing he was about to catch the monkey, Shah Danon's brain suddenly boomed. His body uncontrollably shook twice. A nauseous feeling rose from his internal organs, went straight to his brain. In a moment, his whole body began to shake. Shah Danon was surprised, did not know what to do at that moment. His chest suddenly became hot. A warm air spread out, protected his heart, then counteracted the nausea. Shah Danon subconsciously looked at his chest, felt that the warm air came from the dark purple bead given to him by Posey. At the same time, Hidi's body also shook twice. Her body softened, fell down. The two of them were originally in midair. Once Hidi lost control, the amber vermilion soul immediately stopped, and the two of them immediately fell from midair. Shah Danon rolled a few times on the ground, in great pain, but he did not care so much. Before he stood up, he quickly shouted, Shiji, are you okay? Hidi fell in front of him, motionless, face pale, forehead full of cold sweat, already fainted. Shah Danon was shocked, guessed it was most likely related to the strange feeling. He endured the pain, got up and ran to Hidi, pushed her and called her a few times, but Hidi still did not respond. Shah Danon looked around, saw with the pond as the center, within 3 feet, not a blade of grass grew, but outside 3 feet there were lush trees. He clenched his teeth and resisted the nausea that surfaced in his heart from time to time. He carried Hidi on his back, and at the same time picked up the amber vermilion soul that was thrown to one side, and walked out. This distance of 2 feet is not worth mentioning in normal times, but under the attack of the nausea, it was extremely difficult to walk. With great difficulty, he walked 30 feet and arrived under a large pine tree. As expected, that nauseous feeling immediately disappeared without a trace. Shah Danon put down Hidi, breathing heavily. He looked at the pond and saw the gray monkey was still there, no longer moving. Its face was filled with pain. Its eyes seemed to be asking for help. Shah Danon frowned, finally could not bear it, stood up and walked inside. After a few steps, the nausea appeared again. At the same time, the warmth in his chest rose again, resisting the uncomfortable feeling. Shah Danon slowly walked to the side of the monkey, his forehead full of sweat. The gray monkey saw him came, but did not move, seemed to be unable to breathe. Shah Danon took a deep breath, bent down and picked up the monkey, turned and walked outside. The gray monkey was very obedient at this time, quietly lying in his arms. With great difficulty, he walked out again and walked to the side of Tion Linger, who was still unconscious. That disgusting feeling disappeared. Shah Danon put down the gray monkey, sat on the ground, breathed heavily. The gray monkey was also relieved, lying on the ground, eyes rolling around, but did not run away, only looked at Shah Danon. Shah Danon opened his clothes, took out the bead tied with the red string, and examined it. The original dark purple appearance had turned into light purple. The green gas inside seemed to be stimulated. Its speed was 10 times faster, spinning nonstop, hitting the surface of the bead. Just like before, every time the green gas hit the bead, there will be the Buddhist incantation of swastika to block it. And the warmth that saved Shah Danon was also from this incantation. But Shah Danon clearly saw, compared to 3 years ago, the Buddhist incantation of swastika, no matter in size or brightness, was much inferior. Chapter 15. Shah Danon looked at the bead for a while. His breathing gradually calmed down. But aside from the color and brightness, he could not see anything else, so he put back in his chest. He looked at Tion Linger beside him and saw that she was still unconscious, but her face gradually had color. Her condition was much better. He picked up that amber vermilion soul and looked at it carefully. This was the first time he looked at this treasure at such a close distance. He felt that it was soft to the touch and very comfortable. Recalling Tion Linger's graceful figure flying in the air, His heart was filled with envy. He looked for a while, then made a gesture with his hand like Hede did, then shouted, "Rise!" The amber vermilion soul was like a dead snake. It didn't move at all. G. It was the gray monkey holding its stomach, fell on the ground, laughing. Shah Danon glared at it. But after going through the hardship together with the monkey, he felt a little bit closer. The previous hostility was gone. He stuck out his tongue and made a face at the monkey, then ignored it. He put the phoenix soul next to Hede, then looked at the pond in the middle of the open space. It was a small pond. The area was not big, and the source could not be seen. It was probably formed by the underground spring. The water in the pond was dark green. Looking at it from here, it was impossible to tell how deep it was. There was a gap on the west side of the pond. The water flowed out from there and formed a small stream. In the middle of the pond, there was a pile of rocks of different sizes and shapes. A small part of them was exposed above the water. Among the rocks, there was a short black stick sticking out of the water. The rest of the stick was submerged in the water. It was black. It was hard to tell what material it was made of. It was very ugly. Shah Danon did not mind. He felt this place was strange. It was better to leave early. But Hede had calmed down, but she was still unconscious. No matter how he called her, she would not wake up. In contrast, the gray monkey was very energetic, scratching its ears and cheeks, scratching tickles, and catching lice. Could not calm down for even a moment. It even went into the forest and picked some wild fruit from somewhere, threw 2 to Shah Danon, then sat on the ground and ate them with relish. Shah Danon took a bite of the wild fruit. It was sweet and juicy. His appetite increased. He went up the mountain in the early morning and chased all the way. It was almost noon now, and he had not had a single drop of water. He was already hungry. He ate 1 and 2 or 3 mouthfuls and was about to pick up the second one when he suddenly shook his head and gently placed it beside Tianlinger. After eating the fruit, the hunger in Shah Danon's stomach was reduced, and his spirit was much better. He stood up and stretched his body. He looked around, only to see the ancient trees and the gurgling brook. The scenery was quite beautiful, but who would have thought that it would be so strange? At that moment, Shah Danon felt his chest was hot. Then he heard ka sound, like something was broken. He was shocked and quickly took out the bead from his chest. He was shocked to see that the entire bead was glowing with a green light. The green gas inside was like a wolf and a tiger, desperately hitting the wall of the bead. The swastika mantra that was stopping it was getting weaker and weaker. It was getting dimmer and dimmer. It looked like it would not be able to withstand it. How could Shah Danon know? This seemingly ordinary bead is actually the world's most dangerous object, sinister orb. The origin of this bead was unknown, but it has a strange characteristic. It is fond of living creatures' blood. If any living creatures get close to it, their blood will be sucked dry by sinister orb, and they will die, leaving only their skin. It is really a very terrifying evil item. Thousands of years ago, this bead was obtained by the Falcon Elder Blackheart. Because of his blood-sucking ability, he made it into an esper. For a time, it was invincible, killed many righteous people, and became one of the 4 treasures of the Falcon. After the death of Elder Blackheart, the bead disappeared without a trace. Tian In Temple Puji, divine monk by chance, 30 years ago in the western Great Marsh accidentally discovered this fierce pearl, at that time within a radius of 10 miles. White bones piled up, there were no living things. It could be said that the people were in misery and suffering, resentment soaring to the sky. Puji's merciful heart was moved. He used Buddhism's great power to keep it. After that, every day and night he used Buddhism's subduing evil secret technique on it to deter the evil power for 30 years without a break. He also used Buddhism's most valuable treasure, jadeite prayer beads, to use its pure energy to resist the blood-devouring evil thoughts. Finally, this evil spirit was suppressed, tightly bound in the beads. Under layers of Buddhist power, it could not see the light of day. Unexpectedly, in the Battle of Grass Temple Village, Puji was heavily wounded by the mysterious black-clothed man. Although the black-clothed man was wounded and escaped, Puji knew he was not hurt. He also knew that the black-clothed man was determined to get the sinister orb. After he took the 3 days must-die pill, he could only extend his life by 3 days. So he took the risk and gave the sinister orb to Shah Danan. He told him not to show it in front of others and to throw it down the cliff. Although it may hurt some innocent people, it was much better than falling into the hands of the heretic. But Pooji never expected that Shah Danan remembered his kindness and kept this evil item as a souvenir. This sinister orb lost the suppression of Pooji's Buddhist magic, and without the pure energy of jadeite rosary to resist, the evil spirit's energy began to corrode the prohibition. But Skysong Temple's exorcist magic was not simple. Although the prohibition lost its master, it was still loyal to its duty and suppressed the evil spirit's energy for 3 whole years. But as time passed, it could not withstand it anymore. Gradually, it became weaker and weaker. Today, the sinister orb was about to break out of the prohibition and bring disaster to the world. Although Shah Danan did not know all the twists and turns, he already had a bad feeling. During the Battle of Grass Temple, when Pooji was fighting with the black-clothed man, the incantation of shaman appeared many times. Although he was young, he remembered it very well. Seeing the situation of the incantation on the sinister orb was getting more and more dangerous, he became anxious. He gripped the orb tightly, channeled his shallow, fawn wisdom, and infused it into the orb. Both of them were from the same source. The incantation of shaman on the sinister orb brightened a lot. But before Shah Danan could smile, it dimmed again. At the same time, a cold energy invaded his body. Half of Shah Danan's body became numb. The gray monkey saw Shah Danan's face was in pain. The green energy on his face brightened. It called out anxiously, but Shah Danan did not care much. He felt all the blood in his body was flowing in reverse toward the direction of the strange orb on his right hand. The fawn wisdom in his body collapsed immediately. It was not the opponent of the cold energy. His meridians were convulsing and painful. He could not bear it any longer, staggered a few steps back. Suddenly his body trembled again. A familiar nauseous feeling returned, rushed straight to his internal organs. He had accidentally entered that empty space again, just that this time there was no longer that warm air to resist. The gray monkey was very anxious and kept squeaking, but it didn't dare to take another step into the open space no matter what. Shah Danan's soul left his body. He did not know what to do. He felt his body was hot and cold, like thousands of ants were biting him. He wanted to vomit, but there was nothing to vomit. It was worse than death. His consciousness became blurred. He stumbled forward. He did not know he had gone in the wrong direction. All the strength in his body was disappearing. His body was shaking. His limbs were weak. His feet were soft. He sat on the ground. He had reached the edge of the pool. He used the last bit of his energy to activate pure essence. He managed to draw some spirit into his body and turned it into fawn wisdom. It relieved the pain a little, but after a moment, it was gone. Shah Danan did not care much. He tried his best to ease the pain, but the cold energy was too strong. There was a strange feeling of nausea. It almost turned his organs inside out and went straight to his brain. Stars were flashing in his eyes. His breathing was disordered. Suddenly, he felt something sweet in his throat. He spat out a mouthful of blood and almost fainted. At this moment, a muffled sound was heard. In that instant, it was like the sky darkened. The sinister orb glowed with green light. The entire orb turned green. A dim golden light flashed. The Buddhism swastika mantra was completely shattered. Shah Danan's body was immediately shrouded by green energy, like a bloodthirsty demon, reborn. However, the strange thing was not over. Almost at the same time, when the green gas regained its freedom, a loud sound came from the middle of the pool. Suddenly, the wind and clouds surged, and the gravel in the pool shot out in all directions, making banging sounds. The green pool water rippled. It spun rapidly around the center and became a large whirlpool. And in the middle of the whirlpool, between the splashes of water, an object slowly emerged. It was that black short stick. It was about 2 feet long and seemed to be made of neither metal nor metal. A wave of fiendish aura rushed out. Shah Danan screamed and fell backward. The sinister orb seemed to be stuck to his palm and could not be shaken off. Faintly, it could be seen that a faint blood color was slowly entering into the orb from Shaw Danon's body. A whistling sound and the sound of water waves, the black short stick suddenly shot out, charged at the green sinister orb. After a moment, a loud bang, the two ferocious objects collided together. Shaw Danon was shaken. His whole body was thrown up more than 10 feet high. On the ground below him, a large pit was created by the strong force. Shaw Danon fell back to the ground. His 7 orifices were bleeding. His head was dizzy, but the pain in his body seemed to have lessened. He only saw a patch of red in front of him. His eyes were bleeding. He used his hands to rub his eyes, only to see that strange black stick smashing onto the sinister orb. The black energy was endless, attacking forward. Sinister orb seemed to have intelligence. It knew it was a great enemy. It withdrew the green energy and used all its strength to resist. The cold and nauseous feeling in Shaw Danon's body gradually faded. Shaw Danon was panting, frightened. He swung his hand, but the two strange things were like a part of his hand. He could not shake them off. The black gas and green light were still fighting against each other. Chapter 16. Shaw Danon was afraid. He just wanted to get away from these two strange things. The farther the better. He used all his strength to get up, but before he could take a step, he felt dizzy. His whole body was swaying. His legs were weak. His body tilted and fell on the ground again. The two energies of the green pearl and black rod were entangled in a fierce battle. However, the black energy seemed to have gained the upper hand. After a moment, the black energy invaded. The green light retreated, unable to resist. At this moment, Shaw Danon suddenly felt a sharp pain in his palm. His heart almost jumped out from his mouth. In his palm, around the sinister orb, dark red blood seeped out of his skin, endless, gradually converging into a big drop of blood. Shaw Danon's body trembled. His face lost all color. Correspondingly, sinister orb bathed in the blood drop. Immediately the green light brightened. Counterattacked, not only turned the situation around, but also gradually suppressed the black energy. As more and more blood seeped out from his hand, Shaw Danon gradually lost consciousness. The bright red blood flowed up, gradually flowed to the joint between the black stick and sinister orb, then stopped flowing. No matter how the green light and the black energy fought, after a moment, the blood seeped in there, gradually dyed the part where the stick and the orb touched red. A faint smell of blood floated in the air. As time passed, the red grew deeper and deeper until it was almost glistening. For some reason, the green light and the black chi that were originally fighting each other dimmed. Instead of rejecting each other and fighting each other, they gradually showed signs of merging. After a long time, this strange change finally came to an end. The black stick and green orb completely lost their light, fused together with a ka sound, fell from the unconscious Shaw Danon's hand, fell to the ground. Xiao Fan, Xiao Fan, Xiao Shitty. A series of anxious calls echoed in Shaw Danon's ears. His mind was a mess, only felt the extreme pain in his head. It seemed like even opening his eyes used up all his strength. Tian Linger's anxious face with a trace of panic seemed to be far yet near. Slowly became clear in front of his eyes. He moved his lips, quietly called out, "Senior sister." Heidi was overjoyed, said, "Xiao Fan, you are awake?" Shaw Danon forced a smile, said, "I am fine, Shiji." Heidi helped him to sit up. Shaw Danon first looked at his palm. The skin of his right hand was not damaged, except a little pale. There was nothing strange. He was startled. He clearly remembered a large amount of blood came out from his palm. How come there was no trace? Is that a nightmare? Xiao Fan. Tian Linger saw that after he sat up. He was in a daze and looked as if his soul had left his body. She was worried and pushed him. Shaw Danon woke up. He was about to tell her about the strange thing, but he didn't know where to start. He thought it was too strange. He startled for a moment, then finally said, "No, nothing, Shiji." Tian Linger was then relieved. After she woke up, she saw that the sky was already dark. She was lying under a big pine tree. Her junior brother was lying on an empty ground far away, unconscious. She was afraid and quickly ran to Shah Danon. Luckily, she woke him up after a moment. Hede looked around, said to Shah Danon, "Shitty, this place seems strange. We should leave here as soon as possible. Tomorrow I will ask Mother to come check." Shah Danon nodded, was about to get up. Suddenly his whole body was in pain. His head was dizzy. If not for Hede quickly holding him up, he would have fallen down again. Hede saw his face was extremely pale. Not even a trace of blood could be seen. She was really worried. She carefully helped him up. Shah Danon calmed himself down, looked at his body, did not see any wounds, said, "Shaji, I am just a little dizzy. Nothing serious." Hede looked at him carefully again. It was true, nodded. "Then we should go back quickly. The sky is already dark. I am afraid Father, Mother, and Shixians are all worried." Shah Danon said, "Yes." Hede took a deep breath, checked her body, and found nothing strange. She was wondering why she fainted for no reason. Following that, he gestured with his hand, and with a flash of red light, the amber vermilion soul whizzed out. Hede and Shah Danon were about to go up. Suddenly they heard a squeak sound. They turned around and saw the gray monkey was standing next to them. Grinning at them, his hand was dragging a 2-feet-long stick made of unknown material. In front of Bamboo Peak's Hall of Quietude, Tion Belize paced back and forth, his eyebrows frowned, his face was slightly anxious. This morning his daughter and that useless 7th disciple went to the back of the mountain to cut bamboo and play. Until now the sky is dark. They still have not come back. Serene had gone out to search early in the morning. Now all the disciples were sent out by him. But there was no trace of them on Bamboo Peak. The surrounding mountains were undulating, dense forest. To find 2 people was like finding a needle in a haystack. While he was anxious, suddenly there was a sound of breaking the air. Tion Belize looked up. It was Serene who came back with the 2 little rascals. Hede and Amamla appeared to be fine, but there was a gray monkey on Shah Danon's shoulder. No one knew where it came from. Tion Belize was relieved, but the anger on his face did not recede. Shah Danon looked at his master. His heart was scared, did not dare to move, lowered his head all the way to his chest. But that gray monkey was very naughty, reached into Shah Danon's hair, seemingly trying to find a few lice there. Tion Linger kept the amber vermilion soul. From the corner of her eyes, she saw her father standing in front of the hall with a face full of anger. Her eyes rolled a few times. Her smile was like a flower, extremely innocent and adorable. She bounced and skipped to Tion by his side, pulled his hand and said, "Father, we are back." Tion Belize snorted, said, "Where did you go?" Hede giggled and said, "When Xiao Fan was chopping bamboo, he was bullied by a monkey. I went to catch it to help Xiao Fan vent his anger. Oh, it's that monkey." Then she pointed at Shah Danon. The gray monkey on Shah Danon's shoulder was startled, zhizhi twice, made an angry gesture, then scratched its head and put its attention back to Shah Danon's hair. Tion Linger made a face at it, and then roughly told it about the chase, and said, "After chasing to the valley, I suddenly felt a wave of nausea and fainted for some reason. When I woke up, I saw Xiao Fan lying on the ground, unconscious. But luckily we were not hurt. When we were about to come back, I saw that the monkey seemed to be very attached to Xiao Fan, so I brought it back." Tion Belize frowned, turned to his wife, said, "What happened?" Serene shook her head. "When I found them at the back of the mountain, I went down to check. There was nothing unusual. I think it is most likely because Hede's cultivation is not enough, and she forced herself to ride Phoenix Soul with Xiao Fan. In the end, she was exhausted." Hede said coquettishly, "Mom, what are you talking about? How come my cultivation is not enough?" "Xiao Fan, don't you think so?" Shah Danon quickly said, "Yes, yes, yes." Tion Belize rolled his eyes at Shah Danon, said coldly, "As a Jadian disciple, being bullied by a monkey, if this gets out, my face will be thrown away by you." Shah Danon's face turned red, did not dare to say a word, lowered his head. Serene walked over, held Hede's hand, said softly, "You haven't eaten for a day, hungry?" Hede stuck out her tongue, smiled. "So hungry, Mom." Serene glared at her, pulled her to the kitchen, said, "Little kid, but big mischief." Shah Danon also felt hungry, but in front of Tion Belize, he did not dare to move. He heard Serene and Tion Linger had gone far away, but his master did not make any movement. He secretly looked up and saw there was no one in front of the hall. Tion Belize had left. Probably in his heart, he was scolding this idiot disciple and felt it was a waste of energy. Sha Danon was at a loss, stood there for a long time, until his stomach was roaring. Then he turned around, but did not want to go to the kitchen, instead went to his room. Returning to his room, he closed the door. That gray monkey on his shoulder looked left and right, then squeaked, as if it knew that it was home. It jumped down from his shoulder and scurried to the bed in 2 or 3 steps. It jumped up and down, then grabbed the pillow and threw it around, as if it was very happy. Sha Danon looked at the gray monkey. A smile appeared on his lips, but it was immediately suppressed by the hunger. He sat next to the table, poured a cup of cold water from the teapot, and drank it. A chill went straight into his heart. He sat for a while, then took out something from his clothes. It was that ugly short stick. At this moment, the bead that Posey gave him was tightly connected to the unknown short stick. Even the color became dark green, black, and the place where it was connected was dark red, like solidified blood stains, not only ugly, but also a little disgusting. He looked for a while, suddenly smiled bitterly through the short stick at the wall. The short stick hit the wall, made a loud sound, then fell down, landed at the corner of the room. The gray monkey was surprised, looked at Sha Danon, did not know why he was angry. Sha Danon sighed, took off his shoes, went to bed, covered his head with the quilt, and slept. The monkey touched its head, did not understand. That night, Sha Danon tossed and turned, hungry, until late at night, then fell asleep. Chapter 17. After returning from the deep valley, another half a month had passed. Sha Danon had been in Jade for a full 3 years. At the same time, he had also ended his bamboo cutting career. But at the end of the day, the results he handed and made him feel ashamed. Because of that inexplicable trip to the deep valley, in the next half month, Sha Danon often felt dizzy, lacking of qi and blood. His whole body was especially easily tired. He secretly guessed that it might be caused by the massive bleeding he saw when he was delirious that day. But after checking his body, there was no wound. His heart was uneasy, but he did not dare to ask his master, so he buried it in his heart. But he did not speak, but his body reacted. Usually, he would be able to chop off at least 2 big black bamboo. But now, after chopping a few times, he was already panting and sweating profusely. After half a day, he could not even chop off a single big black bamboo. Actually, it was not surprising. That day in the deep valley, sinister orb almost absorbed half of his blood. If his body was not strong, he would have been bedridden. But Sha Danon wanted to cut bamboo like before. It was also wishful thinking. This situation continued until half a month later. Sha Danon felt his body was slightly better, his spirit and strength were better. But the bamboo cutting homework was also finished at this time. On the last day, under the gaze of the Shixiang, Xavion, and others, Sha Danon used all his strength and finally cut a black bamboo before the end of the hour. Xavion and the rest looked at each other, speechless. Only Tion Linger walked up, giggled, and patted his shoulder, said, "Xiao Fan, don't worry, you have 1/10 of my ability. It is already very good." Sha Danon smiled bitterly. At 10 o'clock, the Bamboo Peak people sat in the dining hall. After Tion Belize and his wife sat down, Xavion first reported Sha Danon's situation. Tion Belize sneered, did not even look at Sha Danon, but Serene smiled, said, "Ah, Xiao Fan, you have been in Bamboo Peak for 3 years." Sha Danon quickly said, "Yes, Shenyang." Suru sighed softly and said, "Sigh, time really flies." In the blink of an eye, 3 years have passed. Then she suddenly paused, raised her voice, said to the other 6 disciples, "Do you all feel the same?" The Bamboo Peak disciples were all shocked, immediately sat up straight, said, "Yes." Surin snorted, said, "Now your Xiao Shitty has grown up, but you all still have no progress in these 3 years. Are you going to anger me and your master to death?" No one dared to speak, but they all looked at Xavion. Under the urging of the other junior brothers, Xavion braced himself and said, "Don't worry, master's wife. We will definitely do our best this time. Suru's face clearly showed the word don't believe. Just as she was about to speak, Tian Bui suddenly interrupted. Lao Lu. Amanda's body shivered, raised his head, surprised. Sixth. Tian Belize said indifferently. These few days I saw you dancing in front of the pots and pans in your spare time. What's going on? Du Baishu's face turned red. He was tongue-tied and stammered. Teacher, you. How did you see it? Amanda hesitated for a while, whispered, Disciple wants to see if I can make those things move. Everyone was moved. Drive was the fundamental foundation of Jadian's Esper cultivation. It was unimaginable without reaching pure essence Yuqing level 4. Everyone was moved. The realm of driving objects was the fundamental foundation of cultivating magical treasures in Jadian Taoism. It was unimaginable unless one had reached the 4th level of pure essence Yuqing. Tian Belize nodded, although there was no expression on his face, but a trace of joy flashed across his eyes, said, How is it? Boom! Everyone was in an uproar, all surprised. Fifth Ladaxin, who was sitting beside him, patted his shoulder, his face full of smiles. Serene was also beaming with joy, said, Good boy, didn't expect you to be so successful. When did it happen? Amanda was influenced by the crowd, also relaxed, said, Just recently. A few days ago, I was practicing in my room, suddenly felt the cup on the table moved under my telekinesis, so I guessed if I had broken through the 3rd level. Du Baishu was influenced by the crowd, also relaxed, and said, Just recently, a few days ago when I was practicing in my room, I suddenly felt that under the influence of my mind power, the cup on the table moved a little. I guessed that it might be because I broke through the 3rd level. Amanda smiled. It's like this. Yuqing level 4 and level 3. Although there's a world of difference in effect, there is no obvious difference. Tian Belize smiled. It's like this between Yuqing level 4 and level 3. Although the effect is as different as heaven and earth, but there is no obvious difference at the beginning of practice. Everyone laughed, congratulated him. Heidi interrupted. 6 Xixiao, have you decided what Esper to cultivate? Amanda was startled, said, No, I just learned from Master that I have cultivated to level 4. Didn't have time to think about it. Serene smiled. No hurry. Take your time to think about it. But you all know your Master's temper. He never forced you to cultivate. What do you like? Then go find the materials. Suru smiled and said, There's no rush. You can slowly think about it in the next few days. However, you all know your Master's temper. He will never force you to cultivate the immortal sword. You can find the materials once you have thought about it. Sha Danan was extremely envious. Seeing 6 Xixiang's face was full of teeth, Tian Belize said, 6th. Du Baishu quickly said, Master. Tian Belize said, According to our Jadian tradition, disciples who have reached the 4th level of pure essence must go down the mountain and travel around the world. At the same time, look for good materials and magical items to practice Esper. As to whether you can get the magical item that can gather the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, it depends on your luck. You should get ready and go down the mountain in a few days. Du Baishu was startled for a moment. In his eyes there was some reluctance and also some joy. He quietly said, Yes. Then he thought of something and said, But Master, this disciple has always been in charge of the meals here. But after this disciple left, beside him, Lv Dashin laughed and said, What are you afraid of? Didn't you have me before you joined the sect? Don't worry, you won't starve to death. Du Baishu and the rest all laughed out. Only Tian Linger at the side laughed and said, 5th senior brother, you still have the cheek to say that the food you cooked when I was young, I always had nightmares. Louis Dashin blushed. Everyone burst into laughter. When the laughter stopped, Tian Belize lightly said, From now on, let Lao Chi do the kitchen work. Everyone startled. Lv Dashin hesitated, said, Master, Shitty is still young. Tian Belize looked at Sha Danan. Sha Danan quickly said, Don't worry, Master. I often follow 6 Xixiang to help in the kitchen. I know how to cook. Tian Belize nodded, did not say much, waved his hand, Eat. 3 days later, Du Baishu finished packing, arranged all the kitchen work, then went down the mountain. For 3 years, among the Xixiangs, Du Baishu was the youngest. His personality was also lively. Sha Danan was the closest to him. Now that he left, Sha Danan was quite reluctant, felt that Bamboo Peak suddenly became a bit more lonely. After that, Sha Danan began his second homework in Jade cooking. That day was the first time he officially cooked. He worked alone in the kitchen for the whole morning, washing rice and washing vegetables. It was already noon. Tian Belize and others entered the dining hall. The table was filled with food, as usual. Sha Danan sat at the end of the table, hands clasped together, trembling. Anyone could feel the nervousness. They sat down. Tian Belize did not say anything, but Serene looked at Sha Danan, smiled, said, "Xiao Fan, how do you feel for your first time cooking?" Sha Danan opened his mouth, but could not think of what to say. Tian Belize snorted, said, "Eat." The disciples answered, picked up the chopsticks, and put it into their mouths. In the dining hall, it was silent. Sha Danan's nervous heart jumped to his throat. Cold sweat came out from his forehead, whispered, "Master Xixiang, I did not do well, you all. Wow, it's so delicious." Heidi suddenly shouted, couldn't help but put a piece of bamboo shoot into her mouth. Sha Danan, startled, saw the Xixiangs were all smiling, nodding, eating like the wind, praising. "Can't believe Xiao Shidi has this skill. Amazing, amazing. Well, it's better than Laowu. No, it's better than Laowu and Laowu combined." Even Tian Belize also picked up a few more chopsticks, nodded, a bit of smile in his eyes. Sha Danan saw that. A sense of satisfaction rose in his eyes. After that, Sha Danan continued to cook in the kitchen. He had yet to reveal any talent in the cultivation of Dao techniques, but he was actually quite talented in cooking. His skills were self-taught, and the dishes he cooked were delicious, far better than those of others. In his heart, as long as Tian Belize slightly nodded his approval, it was already the greatest joy. Time flew. Another half a year had passed. Jade's 7 Peaks tournament, which happens once every 60 years, was getting closer. Not only Serene, even Tian Belize began to urge his disciples. Everyone was focused on cultivation, but no one bothered Sha Danan. They did not have any hope on him anyway. As for Sha Danan, he did not care. Every day, he was busy in the kitchen. He learned some happiness from the pots and pans. In his free time, he practiced cultivation, and every night he practiced fawn wisdom. His days passed peacefully. During this time, the gray monkey he brought back from the deep valley lived with him for half a year. The monkey and human were very close. Sha Danan even gave it a name, Ash. The name was just like his own name, plain and inconspicuous. Ever since he began to work in the kitchen, Little Gray was in a favorable position, often following him to the kitchen, grabbing a piece of bamboo shoot here, a piece of fruit there, stealing food all day long. But in this bamboo peak, the monkey Little Gray still has a rival, and that is the big yellow dog that Tian Boli raised from a young age, Dahuang. For some reason, Big Yellow always found this monkey an eyesore. In the beginning, every time it saw Xiao Hui, it would bark incessantly, scaring Xiao Hui so much that it would hide on higher ground. After a long time, it finally reluctantly admitted that Xiao Hui was a member of Big Bamboo Valley. But every time they met, it would bare its teeth and make a ferocious expression. Every time Xiao Hui was scared to the point of easy screeching, Big Yellow would woof 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 a few times, raise its head, wagged its tail, and walked to one side. Autumn passed, and winter came. Bamboo Peaks, weather was getting colder. Except for Tian Belize and his wife, who had high cultivation and were not afraid of the cold. The rest of the disciples slowly put on clothes. Today, Bamboo Peak had a rare warm sunshine. Sha Danan finished his work in the kitchen, walked out, stretched, then sat down next to a pine tree, leaned against the trunk, closed his eyes, comfortably enjoying the sunshine. After sitting for a while, when he was about to fall asleep, Sha Danan suddenly heard barking in front of him. He opened his eyes and saw Big Yellow was lying on the ground in front of him, lazily basking in the sun. Ash was moving toward Big Yellow step by step from behind. Sha Danan was surprised. Big Yellow often went to the kitchen to eat. They were very familiar with each other, so he was very clear about the relationship between the monkey and the dog. But today it was like the sun rose from the west. Ash was approaching Big Yellow. Sha Danan became alert and stared at the front. Xiao Hui was seen approaching De Huang very quickly. Although De Huang could not see what was behind him, but with a twitch of its nose, it immediately smelled something strange behind it, turned around, and immediately opened its mouth, revealing its sharp teeth. Woof, woof, woof continuously barked a few times. Ash's body shrank, still a little scared. But the monkey's eyes rolled, raised his right hand, and waved it in front of Big Yellow. De Huang at first thought nothing of it, barked incessantly at Xiao Hui. Unexpectedly, after a while, its nose sniffed a few times. As if it smelt something, its two dog eyes immediately stared at Xiao Hui's hand, did not blink, did not move, also stopped barking, opened its mouth and stretched out its long tongue. Even its dog tail also started to wag incessantly, showing friendliness. Sha Danan was surprised. He couldn't help but laugh. Ash was holding a piece of meat bone in his hand. The fragrance was so strong that he could smell it from far away. He used it to make soup. Because he knew Big Yellow loved to eat this, he sealed it and put it on a high place. But Ash stole a piece and came to get close to Big Yellow. Ash shook it twice, then threw the meat bone in front of Big Yellow. Big Yellow's mouth was already drooling. He immediately opened his mouth and bit the meat bone. Ash looked at Big Yellow, called out twice, carefully approached Big Yellow. After a moment of hesitation, he reached out his hand and touched Big Yellow's head. Big Yellow suddenly called out quietly. Ash quickly took back his hand, but after a while, he couldn't help but reached out his hand and touched Big Yellow's head again. This time, Big Yellow did not respond. He was busy eating the meat bone. Ash put his hand on Big Yellow's head, gently stroked Big Yellow's bright and soft yellow hair. Big Yellow seemed to feel very comfortable. He shrunk a little and let out a low growl. But there was no hostility. Xiao Hui became more daring, laughed and called out twice, started to rummage through De Huang's fur, seemed to be looking for lice. De Huang turned its head and actually used its tongue to lick Xiao Hui. This monkey and dog were incomparably intimate, becoming more intimate than anything else. Sha Danan was stunned, thinking that Ash was really smart, but it seemed like he needed to hide the bone even more secretly in the future. While he was thinking, suddenly there was a sound of breaking air. Two beams of white light came from the west. Big Yellow was surprised, barked loudly at the white light. Ash reached out his hand and patted Big Yellow's head. It seemed like he was comforting Big Yellow, but it was very effective. Big Yellow immediately calmed down. Sha Danan saw the two beams of white light landed in front of the main hall of quietude. After a flash of light, two people appeared. One of them was tall and handsome. His white clothes fluttered in the wind, very handsome. The other person was a young man, shorter than him, about 15 or 16 years old. Sha Danan suddenly held his breath. A forgotten sorrow rose from deep in his heart. Because of that lonely figure. Jingyu. He stood up, his voice becoming hoarse as he called out. The young man's body shook, immediately turned around. His eyes were wide open, his mouth was wide open, seemed like he wanted to say something. But in the end, thousands of words turned into two words, Xiao Fan. Chapter 18. Dragonhead Peak Master Vas Kalo's disciples Kevern and Bei greet Tian Shirshu and Su Shirshu. In observed silence hall, Tian Belize and Serene sat at the top, the rest of the disciples lined up at the side. In the middle, two people in white, namely Bei and another handsome youth called Kevern, were greeting Tian Belize. Sha Danan stood at the end of the line, looking at Bei. After several years, everyone had grown up. At this moment, Bei also turned his head and looked at Sha Danan. Their eyes met. Bei smiled. Sha Danan's heart warmed, filled with emotion, nodded. Tian Belize looked at Kevern, then glanced at Bei. His face darkened. He saw that these two people were handsome. With his eyesight, he could see that these two people were much more talented than his own disciples. Needless to say, Kevern was already famous among the younger generation of Jadian. But the young Bei, from the fact that he could already fly his sword, he must have at least reached the 4th level of Tai Chi Xianxing Wei. He had only been in the sect for 3.5 years. This talent was really amazing. Thinking of this, Tian Belize looked at Sha Danan. Comparing the two, Tian Belize's mood was bad. He said coldly, "What did your master send you here for?" Kevern cupped his hands. Tion Sure Shu, my Master Vaskalo was asked by Head Master Doyle Shun to take care of the Seven Peaks tournament in 2 years. Because of some changes, he ordered me and Lin Shitty to report. Tion Belize snorted, looked at Bay up and down, said, he is purposely trying to show off to me. Kevern and Bay's face changed. Bay was about to explode, but Kevern stopped him, smiled. Tion Sure Shu really knows how to joke. We are both from Jadian. Tion Sure Shu is a person of virtue and prestige. My master did not mean any disrespect. Tion Bai's face was gloomy, did not look any better, but Suru beside him smiled amiably, said gently, you all don't need to mind. Tion teacher uncle is joking with you. Right, you said there's some change, what is it? Kevern respectfully said, Su Sure Shu, it is like this. In the past 7 Peaks tournament, Jadian will send 4 people each. This time, Peak of Widows will send 4 more people, making a total of 32. They will draw lots to fight. The winner will advance. After 5 rounds, the winner will be the leader of the younger generation of Jadian and will be nurtured by the masters. Suru pursed her lips into a smile, graceful and charming, said, speaking of which, in the last general examination, you were the one in the limelight. I remember that you were the 2nd rank in the end. If not for that Xiao Yikai from the main house, you might have been the one who snatched Qing Yun's sex martial champion. Kevern's expression did not change. He smiled and said, Su Sure Shu is flattering me. In the last examination, Xiao Yikai Shixiang is a genius with profound cultivation. I am far inferior to him. I admit defeat and have nothing to say. But about the 7 Peaks tournament in 2 years, said, Master Eno Yikai Shixiang. Shixiang is very talented. I am far from him. Tion Belize and Serene were surprised at the same time, said, what happened? Kevern said, my Master Vaskalo, believes that the purpose of the 7 Peaks tournament is to find the best disciples from each faction and nurture them. In Qing Yun's sect to this day, there were already close to 1,000 disciples, among which there were many new disciples of the younger generation, among which there was no lack of outstanding talents. From this point of view, there was only one chance every 60 years, and each branch only had 4 people. It was really too little. That's why my master suggested that each faction send out 9 disciples. Among them, the head faction has the most disciples. With 1 more disciple, there will be 64 disciples. On this basis, they will draw lots to decide the winner after 6 rounds. This way, we can avoid the regret of losing a pearl in the vast ocean. Tion Bui and Suru looked at each other, their faces even uglier. His Big Bamboo Peak's disciples were small in number and poor in aptitude. At first glance, it seemed that they were at an advantage, but in fact, it was Tong Tian Peak and Song Song's Long Shou Peak who had the greatest number of disciples who were at an advantage. Suru saw her husband's expression was ugly. She shook her head slightly and signaled with her eyes. Tion Bui knew what his wife meant. Since Head Shixiang and Vaskalo had discussed it, it was a done deal. There was no point in arguing. He said coldly, that's good. I have no objection. Kevern smiled, said, that's the best. In addition, before I left, my master had instructed me to do something. That is, my junior brother Lin and martial uncle Tion's disciple, junior brother Zhang, are old friends. I hope that martial uncle Tion will allow them to catch up. Tion Bui was angry, waved his hand, said impatiently, approved. Bei had been waiting impatiently for a long time, but because he was a senior elder, he did not dare to say anything. Now that he heard it was approved, he turned around and walked toward Shaw Danon. Shaw Danon was excited. He also walked out. Bei walked in front of him, carefully looked at him. His eyes suddenly turned red, said bitterly, you have grown up, Xiao Fan. Shaw Danon's heart was filled with mixed feelings, nodded, said, you too, right? Do you have any news about the tragedy in the village? Bei shook his head. I have asked Master many times, but there is no progress. What about you? Shaw Danon smiled bitterly. Me too. Bei pulled his hand, said, let's go outside and talk. Shaw Danon hesitated, turned and looked at Tion Bui and Serene. Tion Bui ignored him, but Serene smiled. Go. Shaw Danon was overjoyed, nodded to her, and quickly went out with Bay. In the hall, there was only Kevin left. He was dressed in white, elegant and outstanding. Without the slightest expression, he looked at the Big Bamboo Valley disciples one by one, and finally his eyes fell on Xavion, cupped his hands and said with a smile, "This must be Xavion Song Shi Xiao. We have met in the last examination." Xavion quickly returned the greeting, said, "Chi Shi Xiang has a good memory. Still remember me, a defeated opponent." Once the words were said, the disciples were moved. Tian Linger stood beside her mother, quietly asked, "Mother, why was the Shi Xiang defeated in his hands?" Serene nodded, lowered her voice. "Yes. That year, Yuda Shi Xiang won 2 rounds in a row. Your father and I were very happy. Unexpectedly, he met this person in the 3rd round and was defeated after a few rounds." Hidi stuck out her tongue, said, "Then isn't he very strong?" Serene did not answer her immediately, but turned to look at her husband. Tian Bai's face was pale, sitting motionless. She could only shake her head, said, "Kevin's talent is far better than your Shi Xiao." That day in the tournament, he did not use any tricks, especially the sword he practiced, frozen ice. It is made from the North Pole's ice crystal. It is very powerful. Yurta Shi Xiang cannot compete with him. At this moment, Tian Bui seemed to feel something and also turned to look at Serene. Their eyes met. Both saw the words hidden deep in each other's heart, but not spoken out. That was if Big Bamboo Peak had such a talent, how good it would be. Below the hall, Kevin was chatting with the disciples. His practice was successful, and he was trusted by his teachers. He often traveled the world and was knowledgeable. In addition, he was eloquent and witty. For a moment, everyone wanted to get close to him. Even Xavion, who was defeated by him before, had long lost his hostility. A burst of laughter passed by. Kevin did not know what kind of joke he was making, but everyone laughed. Kevin's gaze unintentionally landed on Tian Linger, who was standing behind Suru, and then saw the amber vermilion soul wrapped around her waist. His eyes brightened, smiled, and said, "Isn't this lady the famous Tian Linger Tian Shimmy?" Hidi raised her eyebrows and said, "How do you know me?" Kevin smiled and walked a few steps forward. He looked at her and said, "Tian Shimmy is only 16 years old. Your attainment in Tai Chi Xinqing Sand is already extraordinary. Everyone in the sect knows about it. I have admired you for a long time. Seeing you today, you really live up to your reputation." Hidi blushed. She said, "You have not seen me fight. How do you know I live up to my reputation?" Kevin was stunned for a moment. Then he smiled and said, "Tian Shimmy is not only beautiful like a flower, but also has a sharp mind. It makes me feel ashamed as your Shi Xiao." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.